Greetings. My name's Philip Daniel Miles, and today I am really excited to be in a collaboration with Michael Dunphy. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing really well, man. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for inviting me and holding space onto your platform.
Mm-hmm.
I love the name of it, Liberating Frequency, right? I'm butchering it.
Further liberation.
Further liberation.
Yeah.
I've got like such a butchering thing, and excuse me.
No worries,
Further liberation is what I'm experiencing with you, because it's nice to have a platform to share my passion of astrology with, and to explore what you're all about. Because we basically made this connection through Ralph Smart, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I resonated because you were on an Instagram live with Ralph Smart, and I listened to what you were saying, and I love your message.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on board today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. Actually, before we jump in, man, for some reason, ever since you started recording, your audio has been off with your video.
My audio's off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
your video is about a 2-second delay.
Oh,
you speak,
right.
And then the video does it afterwards.
Well, I'm using a Wi-Fi, so it might be a bit like that.
Okay.
It might synchronize up a little bit more after the Zoom download at the end.
Let's hope so.
I hope it's not too much of making me look too shoddy. But the message is the quality. The message
Right. Yes, exactly. So
even if my hair looks a bit silly, I just walked about in the wind today, and it's so windy and it's so warm. It's ridiculous, but it also rained, and I took shelter underneath some trees, and it's just such a majestic day today. I feel very like it's like the eye of the storm that we're going through at the moment, just here.
Yeah, I get that vibe a lot in the world in general. You know, we're definitely going through the eye of the storm.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we just had a partial lunar eclipse in Sagittarius a week ago.
Ooh.
And
interesting.
Yes, it's it's the first, not very often that we have 3 eclipses in a row. So we have a very, very total, tight ring of fire, full. It's a new moon solar eclipse, but it's so tight, it's so exact, and it's actually, because it's the summer solstice, it's the death of the sun, which was seeded 6 months prior on the winter solstice, which is the birth of the sun. And so the 6 months later, we see that it's the end of that, and we see the next 6 months, it's like the fading away of that energy of the seed that was sown 6 months ago. And so the sun actually gets eaten, and it's going to be obscured for some time. And it's because the moon is actually further away from Earth at this time. Apparently, there's going to be a ring of fire. And if you could see the eclipse where you are, which I don't know if the case is.
I actually don't know if I can either.
I think maybe in the UK it's going to be at like 10 to 8 in the morning. So I presume that's visible.
Very well could be.
Rainy day.
It's something I will look into, because I'm becoming more interested in that whole concept in general, and that's exactly why I became interested in you when you reached out to me, is because I've had an interest in astrology for a while, but I've never looked deeply into it. Coming from my own perspective, I used to dismiss it when I was younger, because all the scientists I looked up to and respected, I just took them at their word to say that it has no effect on anything at all. But I later realized that all the universe is just energy, and it all permeates waves throughout all of reality. So all the waves and frequencies are interacting with each other. So even if it's a small effect, they're still affecting each other in some way, shape, or form. So it started to make more sense. Ideas such as astrology started to actually gain some merit for me. But I want to learn more about it to find out exactly how it works, and I guess what are the characteristics of it. So if you want to, we could just jump right in, and you could maybe you said read my chart and see what we can find out about me.
I'll be happy. I'd be happy to. I'd like to get to that. But first of all, I also would like to bring some color and shape to the background, like you just did as well. For me, I also was kind of like not coming into full immersement with astrology for quite some time along my journey. It was spiritual interests and expansion through people like Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, and all of these kind of spiritually empowering kind of methods, how we can create our reality, and yet sometimes it still feels like putting a brick wall before going through the process. Because and we're like, oh, okay, well, it's not as simple as this, and there's lots of inner work. And then I went into the shadow work and the spiritual work. And my mum's a therapist as well, psychotherapist, and she teaches it at university. She teaches the people. She teaches the teachers how to teach the course.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that, I don't know what the actual title is, but that's pretty good. And the bookshelf she's got is full of books from like Freud and Jung and Richard Dawkins and all these types of people who draw from astrology but don't use the title astrologer.
Right.
And so the world of commerce and trade and exchange is built, and law is built on the psychology of some of these people's works in the psychology field, and they were all using astrology, like Jung and Freud. They were astrologers. And it was actually the commerce world which kind of was sweeping away the pagan traditions such as astrology and spiritual introspective inquiry. Even the Bible was rewritten, and they were like, you're looking inside and you're listening to voices, then you're talking to the devil, and that's not a good thing, according to them, right? And so we were all kind of dazzled by the outside world. For instance, like there's lots of time and a calendar. Firstly, you've got to get to work on time so that you can actually support yourself. You've got the roof, you've got the children, you've got the food to put on that table, and that's a pressure. And so if you've got to get to work on time, there's not much time for meditation or putting other things like that as a priority, such as emotions, not feeling good, and all of these types of things. And so there's been a build-up, a bit like if you were making smoothies and juices in the kitchen, every day there's a big pile of crap that you need to put into the compost or into the bin at the end of the day. And so the same with our emotions. If we weren't going to clean up where we've been making our smoothies and our juices every day, it's going to be a shithole by the end of the week. Right. So emotionally, and as a civilization over the centuries, that's been building and building and building until this world is a bit of a shit show as it is now. But the thing is, with compost, it's very fertile. And so as it's breaking down, we're seeing the fertility through the darkness. Our depth of perception is very broad and shrewd because we're, in a sense, being illuminated by the depth of the darkness. When you're in darkness, you realise that actually you can see this and that. You can grab everything, like your phone and your wallet, and you can get to the toilet. You don't need to put a light on. Got quite good vision, really. We are like nocturnal, and our depth of perception is phenomenal. And so we've been awakening through that which we really haven't put our attention on very rapidly over these last few months, even if a lot of us swept away in what could be considered to be false narratives. Each of us is still having to look at things which maybe we hadn't, whether it's personal and emotional, very much to the root of our being, or whether it's political, or even if it's conspiracies and a load of hullabaloo. And so that was a really unthought of and unplanned way to explain that. But I would say that definitely I was brought up as in a Christian kind of background. I went to a Christian school, and astrology was something which was not really celebrated. And it was only something that I found more and more passion through about 10 years ago. And the first astrologer who inspired me was to say, hey, I'm not here to be the astrologer who has all the information under a padlock and key. I want you to become your own astrologer. So that's what I do with my clients. I like to empower. I like to show them where they're at and where their chart is and say, these are where the cycle's at. Now I'm passing it over to you and you can take the reins from here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my ethos on it, because I saw that. That's what inspired me 10 years ago. And ever since then, I've been studying and accruing knowledge from things that are in correlation with spiritual awakening and even with conspiracy and self-introspection, shadow work, and seeing what aligns, eating the fruit, spitting out the pips. That's kind of my story.
I see. That's a very cool way of putting it, man. Cool. So, how do you want to take this? Do you want, like you were saying earlier, do you want to start with my reading before we get into any like much more of who we are?
Well, what you've said to me is that what we're going to do is a bit more of a cold reading. So I would actually love to learn more about you and your platform, but at the same time, maybe it's best that, as you say, we go into the reading first, and then we can actually have the open conversation after midway through and open up a bit more of open dialogue, and I can learn more about your journey.
Awesome. All right, cool.
So first of all, I want to give us a little bit of a breakdown to where we are at astrologically before I actually get into your chart, if that's okay.
Yeah, by all means.
And I can share my screen and share the current sky.
Oh,
but before I actually get into that, I will I'll lay the bed with regards to where we're at, and which is very powerful. As obviously anybody can see without even getting the astrology chart out or asking anybody. It's very powerful time for us on the world stage and very personally. Like I mentioned to you, I'm thinking about taking a trip, and I've been quite local quite some time. So this is a very personal experience for me with my relationships and my values and all kinds of things. And I'm sure in your personal life, you can attune to the fact that there's personal things going on as well as the big world stage. And I think that's the same for everybody. However, we're going to look at the world stage in this, and we'll see that the empowerment reflected through that storyline is what we're going through individually as well. So, yeah, we're coming towards what will be the famous age of Aquarius in about 150 years from now. Officially, that would be when the great year comes to its end and starts again, which is a 26,000-year cycle, apparently so. And so what we're doing now is we're in between the ages. The age of Pisces has ended, and what they'd say is that there is a little in between ages part section where it kind of buffs up and it's on the cusp, and we're kind of there. That's where we're at now. And it would be, in the Vedics, we'll call that a Kali Yuga, which is a death cycle, which is no more than a bad harvest, or in a sense, an opportunity to learn while walking through our own shadow. And so every day we walk through very beautiful surroundings, and what we call Maya, or the ancients would call Maya, or we still call Mother Earth, is an illusion, a holographic mirror or miracle, calling back and reflecting parts of ourselves for us to integrate our unconscious through. So you're playing parts of my unconscious, and I'm playing parts of your unconscious, just like the coffee person, just like my mum, just like the person driving the bus, just like whatever. And so nature's like it, and our other compadres are like it, the animals are like it, everything's an omen and a miracle, and this is the beautiful thing, without even putting astrology on it. It's just a beautiful thing, right? And through even dabbling in psychedelics, this is something which I learned to experience along my journey through exploration of mushrooms, and even before that, like ecstasy and DMT and ketamine and cannabis. It kind of like was exploring. I wasn't doing it so much for a party, even though earlier days there was parties going on. I wanted to explore beyond the physical.
Right.
And so also what we learned, there was this connection to Kundalini as well. And I was like, what's this Kundalini about? That was one of my interests. And how's it related to sexuality and yoga? And it was almost a bit taboo. The same astrologer that I was inspired by is a Kundalini. He advocates for Kundalini yoga because astrology and yoga go hand in hand. Because astrology requires none. They're the antidote helpful. And so, with regards to our spiritual work, I had a bit of an internet issue there. I think it's fine.
You did glitch a little bit, but you're fine now.
What we're seeing on a smaller cog of time is that this year's a massive year for astrology. Just looking at now, which we will see in a minute when I show the chart, we have had at the beginning of the year, and we shall be through the second half of the year, experiencing Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto enters Capricorn in 2008, and it takes until 2024 to leave. It's a long old time. It's in 2008 when we had the banks bankrupt, and like many banks went bankrupt, like in Iceland, and that was really good for them. Like, but the other banks, many of the main banks have like gone into refreshment, and that's just been making our currency get less and less worthwhile. We kind of got to where we're at the moment. And so Pluto's the combine harvester, or the demolisher. It's death, rebirth, transmutation, and metamorphosis. And so when it comes along very slowly, what it does is it goes back and forth over the course of a couple of years, and it will change what's before it. A bit like a combine harvester will get rid of the crusty soil on top, and then also eventually bring up the fertile soil from beneath. Okay. Even some relics like a golden Roman coin or a few things, or some rings might come up for the metal detectors. That kind of thing. So you never know what you might find, what might be brought to the surface. And often as well, it's going to bring eventual need for more renewal. Eventually, there's always need for more renewal. And so Pluto takes 240 years to go around. In a sense, actually, America has their Pluto return in a couple of years. Pluto will return back to the same position as it was when the Constitution was made in the next couple of years. So it's already feeling that now.
Okay.
Big thing. But regards to what we're experiencing on a more international level, on a more humanity-based level, is that, we're moving towards that Aquarian age, but we are opening up to it already. We're preparing for it now. This is happening now. And so we've been preparing for it for quite a long time. And it was when America really was founded, a lot more, which was 735 years ago. That was the last time that Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn was in Capricorn, 735 years ago. Okay? And so when Pluto came along in 2008 and demolished pretty much over 2/3 of Capricorn, which is the structures, the traditions, the banking system, the education system, all the things that we carry on, the family hand-me-downs. And it's actually the role of all archetypes. It's also time, how we see time. It's all traditions, calendars, and things. And so since Saturn in 2017 came along, which takes 28 years, Saturn comes around every 28 years, and joined Pluto, is actually restructuring things, started to restructure and build things that had been demolished since 2008. And so we're seeing support for things that had been collapsing, alternatives, and being given some kind of congruence, like Bitcoin, all these types of things. The story is much thicker than that. With regards to the Bitcoin, that's going on, a big thing with Uranus, which is going on in Taurus. But I'm just talking about Capricorn right now. Very convoluted. And so Saturn's coming along, bringing the support and structure. And Jupiter, which goes around every 12 years, came along this past December. So that brings Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in the same sign of Capricorn. So Jupiter is our faith, what we put our faith into. Not just religion, but all things that we learn and study. It's international things. It's I put my faith into money. I put my faith into humanity. I put my faith in the media. And so it's like, I can withdraw things that don't seem faithful to us. Even like a monarchy, you can withdraw from things that don't seem faithful to us, even like our governments. I'll say it one more time. We can withdraw from things like relationships in our lives, from our parents sometimes, from our friends, from our siblings. If they don't seem that they're worth putting our faith and energy into, we get to disengage and connect back to ourselves, which is the direct source. It's the direct line.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice.
Information.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I learned a lot recently about this banking system, which was actually forged back then. When the last time when Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn was in Capricorn in the year 1284. Mm-hmm. That same century, what we call the 1300s, to make things more complicated, was when the banking cartel, the Knights Templar, all the different families, in a sense, used various different faces, masks, flags, and ruses to kind together as kind of fiat currency, kind of monopoly kind of scenario, where they would burn the Bibles, rewrite them, and also take away our heritage. I say take away, it sounds like so victim. We gave them away ourselves. We turned away from our own roots and heritage as farming culture and doing the things that we love. The thing is, when we do things that we love, we feel so good, like self-sustainability. And you only have to work a few hours a day, and you create a vibration of harmony, a golden frequency, which is irreplaceable, and it's priceless. And so when we then actually go to work for Walmart, or we have to go to the church, and we are not actually enjoying the rigmaroles and all of these types of things, we have a fall from our consciousness. We're busy running around. We don't go inwardly, and we're not having that golden harmonic frequency. So our vibration has plummeted as species over the course of these centuries. And over the course of some centuries, there's been, like, obviously up and down waves over the course of that 735 years. There was a reprise of astrology in the 1600s. Even the Queen Elizabeth, who was illegitimate, the first one, all of the royals since Henry VIII have been illegitimate. That's not to say royals are any good in the first place. That's just another boundary between us and our spiritual empowerment, or the treasury, which is within us. As we already mentioned, I mentioned just a moment ago, it's the direct source. You know, you don't have to go to the pulpit. You don't have to say, "Oh, I did a bad thing." We don't have to feel shame and blame. We just say, "I noticed this, and I am me. I am the source. This is it." And the funny thing is, the court system, they play out. When you go to court, I only learned this past couple of weeks, and I've never really been to court, but this happens in many different ways. I think probably with police as well. When you go to court and you're in the Grand Inquisition, is what they're playing out is they're playing the role of the treasury, and then what they want to do is they want to flop it, that they become you. And they're kind of playing the role of the Pope when you go into the vicar, when you go into the pulpit and you're like, I did a bad thing. I cheated on my wife. I cheated on my boyfriend, whatever it was that we did. Cheated myself. I feel bad. And then we feel indebted. And then what they do is they flip it, and then they put the debt on you, and you have to charge, or you have to go to prison. And this is the court system, based on fake fiat debt and owning our body. But when you actually own it and say, no, I am not Philip Daniel Miles, I am Philip. Is there a family name? Yes, but that doesn't matter for now. I'm putting you in ownership of this debt. And then they say, okay, retrial, and then you go, and then they'll recall, whatever, and then you're basically, there's many different ways that could snarl you up, and you can know it's free. I'm no expert on this, but this is the legal law of depression and debt. Because when you feel emotionally down, you actually sink down into lower vibration. But when you actually buoyant, like what we see in the ocean, what we call here as a buoy, it's a ball that floats on the ocean. That's what they would say the Christ is, or like Jesus would walk on water, because the watermark is being enough self-admiration and gusto, in that golden harmonic, love of what you do, whether you're wearing a suit and a boot, whether you're suited and booted, or whatever you do, to present yourself in that way, to make yourself feel that good. Then that's having enough currency not to be depressed or depleted. It's like you're riveting, you're like shooting up, inspired of your own amusement. And so that's really what we do with our spiritual work, so that we're not sunk down. And in a sense, our whole species have been. So anyway, this is very convoluted. Let me get back to the astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, there was a thing I had to read when I found this out in 2017 about the astrology of how Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn were last in Capricorn when the banking cartel started in 1284. I had to research that, what was going on in 1284. And one of the other things was that they had the myth of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which was a myth of a Pied Piper who came into the city who played away the rats in Germany. Another retelling is that they played away the children, or he stole the children with his Pied Pipes. And so I've seen Russell Brand did a retelling of the storybook and recently. Right. And so also you could look at that in many ways. Oh, paedophile, or oh, that's weird, the rats. And like you could say that was also when they had the plague and all of these types of things. On another metaphysical level, you can see actually what it is that it's consciousness that was played away. My examples go on. And so the same story is the St. Patrick story, when St. Patrick played away the snakes out of Ireland. Mm. And as South Park would say, the Simpsons did it because they had whacking day.
Right, yeah.
And so we see actually that the same story gets told again and again. And the Venus creation myth is very powerful. And this is the story: Mother Earth, Gaia, Mama, the illusion, this atmosphere here that we're in. She implored or encouraged Saturn, which was her son and her partner, to cut off the testicles of the sky god Uranus, which was Saturn's father.
Okay.
And that's the firmament. Uranus is the firmament. It's the starry vault. It's the chandelier up here. It's like the pineal gland. And so Saturn was like, yeah, no problem, mum, or my dear. And and he cut off the testicles of what was his father, Uranus, the grandfather, if you will, the sky god. And he threw them into the ocean. And I liken the ocean to the collective unconscious or subconscious, like Pisces. But then out came from this foamy mess that arose, awakening from the mess in the ocean, out of this foamy kind of, I don't know what it was, beautiful kind of thing arose. Aphrodite, Venus, the goddess of all things nice, sugars and spice, came out of the ocean. And so that's the story of the creation of Venus. And so we just put that on the shelf for a moment. And that's the same story that we're going to go back to, and we see how all of this relates. The Peter Pan story is when Peter Pan had to cut off James T. Hook's hand. It was a hand, and he threw it into the crocodile, the hand. And the crocodile went tick-tock, tick-tock, forevermore. And James T. Hook had his hook on then, right? And Peter Pan is Capricorn, because he is the Pan of the land, like the word pandemic, or basically Pan is the crocodile. Also is the ancient animal for Capricorn. The goat's the modern one, but the crocodile would be the original. But Peter Pan's also like the boy who never grew up, and Capricorn is like Benjamin Button. It's time. It's dealing with your shadow, which Peter Pan had to stitch back on.
Okay.
Okay, and so one more story for you, and that is that. Oh, two more. Excuse me. There's a story called Eris, about Eris, which is the goddess of discord. And Eris wasn't invited to the ball in the heavens, a bit like Cinderella or Cinders. She wasn't invited to the ball, but she was Prince Charming. And her sisters, a bit like Sleeping Beauty, you know, they weren't too keen. They were all invited, but Cinders was just a scrubber. She had to stay at home. But anyway, in it, the story of Eris, the goddess, which is all the same story, really, she did go anyway. She's the goddess of discord. And so she went and she rolled in a golden apple to the ball. And they were like, wow, golden apple. And there's a little note on it. And they said that this golden apple was for the fairest of them all, you will, and the most beautiful. And everybody had to decide between them who deserved the golden apple. And there was Helen, who's a goddess, and there was Aphrodite, Venus was there, and a few others. And of course, they chose Aphrodite. She's the goddess of beauty, all things nice, sugars and spice. But the challenge was to see that actually that beauty is more than skin deep. And Prince Charming knew that because he chose Cinderella out of all of the people because of her virtues, because of her depth.
Mm.
And then he chased after her because she had a crystal slipper that fits right on her soul. And so the crystal slipper is Venus, and it's the pineal gland. And when we get caught up into time, it's because, in a sense, we stopped practicing the holy secretion.
Mm.
And we started like masturbating out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kundalini Yoga will teach you to raise the semen up the spinal column, up to all the 33 vertebrae, back to this, back to the temple. And then that brings great illumination. And for all of us, that's not exactly an overnight practice. I can tell you from, like, it's a continued work to even think about considering to work with that kind of energy. And I'm sure that there's plenty of other people who've got more experience than I. However, like the science of it is something I can teach very well because it's actually what the Bible's built on. The Lamb is born in Aries in the head, and that's the I am, Lamb, I am, spark. And so what we had this year, this spring, as soon as the sun went into Aries, which is the same time that Saturn actually went into Aquarius. As I said, Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn have been Saturn. Pluto and Jupiter have been in Capricorn, but Saturn actually did go into Aquarius, though it has been for a few months now. And it will go back into Capricorn in a couple of weeks on the cusp. And eventually, at the end of this year, it does go into Aquarius. We're going to get to that bit. We're almost there. We've been almost halfway through the story now. But when that happened, they announced the coronavirus and they announced the lockdown. Mm-hmm. Because the media, which is the god Medeus, which isn't a flag, it isn't a nation, it isn't a state, it isn't even a corporation, it's behind all of that. The media, which tells the story and tells us a vision for us, like television, as Ralph Smart says in his videos, like, it tells the vision for you, tells lies to your vision. That's where the media works through. And we are told that conspiracy theorists are to be kind of mocked, shunned, walked away from. If you go against the narrative or the alternative. Right. The media story through the crowning of this opportunity, the reawakening of this opportunity for us to gather as a collective. This is a very spiritual awakening time for us. Mm-hmm. And if we kind of have had this distraction saying that there was this virus, which is a lot of hullabaloo, and then we had this the race war, which is also propagated by people in the media and politicians, burying people like a herd of sheep from left to right. And so basically this was seeded back 6 months ago with the eclipse that happened in Capricorn on Boxing Day or Christmas Day, depending on where you were, which echoed back to an eclipse that happened 735 years ago. I'm going to share this on the screen in a minute. And so we actually had a conjunction of Pluto and Saturn on January the 12th, which is the day that Wuhan announced the thing, in Corona. But they didn't lock down until spring in March. Mm-hmm. And it's also basically the end of the monetary system. The banks is absolutely collapsing before our own very own eyes. And the media is the last thing that's hanging. Because the Queen of England has also abdicated, as far as we can see, and the Pope. They've done soft abdications. It's not been put through the media yet. And so this is a massive thing, because that queen and that pope, they run both the sides of the biggest corruption in the media and things. And so this is a passing of the torch into the next phase of whatever that they're aware of the astrology transits. And yet we're awakening. And so we're seeing that this corona thing got thrown into the collective unconscious, just like Venus did in the Venus creation story, right? And everyone's in hysteria. All of us have been faced into hysteria because it affects us all so personally, because everybody knows somebody who's very deeply indoctrinated into media or whatever. And so it rubs off on us. We think, actually, is this, firstly, is this real? There's a lot of checking in and checking out with all of the different people and all the different information that I've personally been doing, and I've seen other people do as well. And some people I'm still around locally, and they like to wear their masks and they're very concerned, when other people aren't. Personally, my practice has been to harmonize with everybody and even not share or bombard people by talking about astrology, keep it calm, keep it cool. Mm-hmm. And if the opportunity opens up to have a conversation, then do so. Mm. And so basically, this is an opportunity with these eclipses for us to turn this all around. Yes, there might be another like lockdown, another iron fist through the winter, where they're trying to help the patriarchal system, and they're saying, you get your vaccines or you get your whatever's, keep you safe. The government will keep you safe. All of these types of things might come back around. More scares, more media stories might come back around. But there's so much arousing and awakening that's been going on that it kind of can't be stopped. That it's not about rioting, it's about producing. It's about creating, as far as I can see. Mm-hmm. Creating and producing the alternatives, like yourself, like me, like all of the different people who are really invested in learning about holistic therapies and diet. I could learn lots about that would really help me on my personal journey, where I haven't actually taken so much of an interest in my personal body, but I know that's something I would love to learn about, heal with, and it's a continual journey. And so maybe we can trade. I could teach those people a little bit about astrology, and I can shut up and listen to them people teach me about diet. Right. This is the kind of thing. And so basically now, after talking about all of that, I just want to pause and get your feedback on it. And then I'm going to share the chart of now, back then, and then we're going to look at your chart. If that's all cool with you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What do you think about all that hullabaloo which I've shared on?
Well, that was a lot of information. I get the general premise, I suppose. Like, you're just basically demonstrating how there's a deep connection between everything that we're experiencing and everything that's going on in the heavens, so to speak. I guess I had some questions. Like, I just like just the basic idea of, like you were saying, that these three planets are in Capricorn. So to me, that means that they are, from our perspective, they are in the constellation of Capricorn when we view it from our viewpoint. Correct?
Well, actually, there's another. I'm using tropical astrology as my motif for this, which is what we use in the West predominantly. Mm-hmm. What they use in the East, or in the Vedic tradition in India, so much more, would be a calendar which was 23 degrees behind the tropical.
Okay.
And so that's what they call the constellations when they're fixing it with the stars. Tropical, what we use on the West, is I'm using the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun, which creates the seasons. And so we go with the path of the sun, and that is what we align with this calendar. And that's of the zodiac. And so I know both, and I can look at both, and I can see the value in both, and see how they're both equal, but they're different frames of observation and different points of witness.
Okay. So
when you say the question which you asked, if we was to look at it in the sky, what we call it in a scientific version of astrology would be sidereal. And so they would say, actually, that now the sun is still at the end of Taurus, whereas actually I'm seeing that the sun is it's actually just in Gemini. I'm looking at a few days ago. The sun's at the beginning of Gemini, whereas I see the sun's towards the end of Gemini.
Okay. So, what creates these particular entities of zodiac? Like you said, it's positioning of the sun as well, but like the the Capricorn is made up of a series of stars. So, what makes those connect to one another? Are they closer together in the Milky Way, or do they have like a vibrational connection or tether keeping them kind of moving in one thing? Or
We made it up. We are people who made it up because we looked at it and we're
Mm,
like, this is 30 degrees and they fit together. They're in a congregation, they're in a constellation. It looks like they're having a tea party or something. What does it look like? Oh, it's a goat with a tail.
sure,
Okay, that's
sure.
Capricorn. But the energy of it has an archetype to it.
Mm,
Sure. The energy of it has the archetype of that which I could explain for an hour what Capricorn is,
mm,
which I've said is time, structure, it's rules and traditions and regulations. It's how the world does things. It's the world view. It's astrology isn't in the world view.
mhm.
Alternative,
Right.
uh, in a sense.
Hmm.
My
So how
mum's,
do
my mum's like, as I said, she's a psychotherapist. She teaches that at the university. She's all about the world view and history.
mm,
And if I was to talk about an alternative or conspiracy, she might laugh, but
mm,
she'll.
mhm. So how do we determine um what was it I wanted to ask exactly? Let me see. Because this is all very new information to me. So my brain is constantly trying to reconcile everything with what I know and trying to make sense of it.
That's
Um,
good. I really appreciate it.
yeah. But you've given me a lot. So at one point I even thought of I don't know if you were a fan of Austin Powers, but I thought of the quote where he goes, "What does it all mean, Basil?" Like everything you're saying is like so much information. I'm like, okay, but what does it all mean?
One of my personal gifts as a being, as an astrologer, is that, as I say, I'm not really traditionalist. So
Mm,
I am more Uranian, what we'd say, and so that's the bit of the pineal gland that was kind of stolen. He was castrated, right? And so the Uranian out the box punk rock and alternative can often be castrated as a scapegoat, kind of thing,
okay.
because we're talking about levels of the story which maybe aren't presented for us by the mainstream, and it's also non-linear the way I told that story, right?
Mm,
And so we are knowing that more and more about time is actually time isn't a linear thing, it's more cyclical,
mm,
and it's not so solid. Even maths has got a metaphysical component to it, magic squares and things like this. And so actually when we look at things that are, there's some texts like biblical text that it's been rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, but there is prophecy within certain things like Nostradamus. There is prophecy that we actually live because time is cyclical.
mm,
And so we're actually seeing that what we're in is prophesized as the end of times,
mm,
but it's also the beginning of times because it's the
mm,
time that we already lived or we have seen lived or retold in the biblical and very different, you know, all of the different arenas through religion and such and such.
mhm. So another thing that I wrote down actually at one point was you talked about the end of the 26,000 year cycle. And I've heard of this before. Like I've looked into like sacred geometry and like patterns in terms of like precession of the equinox and stuff like that. And I'm just curious, what exactly does that 26,000 years represent?
It's the great year, and it's the procession of the zodiac backwards. So when
Okay.
we see the sun through the organic year, the year starts out at Aries in spring on the 20th or 21st of March. That's the
Hmm.
beginning of the zodiac year. In the head, the lambs are born, the Christ is born, the Lamb of God or the pineal gland, whatever happens every day. There's also
Hmm.
equal hours of day and night at that time, 12 hours a day and night. So it takes a year for the sun to go Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. And there's a great mechanism. So basically, I'll just go through it. May as well go through it. So there are 4 elements and there's 3 modalities. 4 times 3 equals 12. So we're working with this kind of very logical system. And so what we'll have is we'll have 4 cardinal signs, and they start out the seasons. And we'll have 4 fixed signs, and they bring security and sustainability to the middle of seasons. And then we have the mutable ones, which change over for the next season. And so Aries is cardinal fire. And then we have fixed earth in Taurus. And then what we have now is mutable air. And then we change into the first water sign, which is Cancer, but it's cardinal again. It's new, it's summer. And then we go into fire with Leo. It's the middle of summer. It's sustaining. And then we go into mutability. It's Virgo. We're getting harvesting all that which we've been working on for the past 6 months. And it's mutability, it's change. We're counting everything. And we're like seeing all of our labours of love come into things. And so then we get a new cardinal energy. It's autumn, fall. And we're weighing things up, you know. And we're coming into equality. We're coming into the evening in the actual day, because this is the day as well. So Aries started at 6 a.m. and then Cancer will be top of the sky at noon, and Libra will be the evening. Aries is also Adam. And what happens with a pulse is actually, it's a wave, as you know, scientists, it's a waveform, and then a wave evens out. It's equal. And so in the evening, we have Eve, and that's Libra.
Okay.
So by the nighttime or by winter, I don't want to skip too much. So with Scorpio, it's the middle, it's fixed. That's the middle of autumn, it's darkness, mushrooms time, sex, it's like evening time. And then we get Sagittarius. It's really when you might be learning things, and like you might be being more jovial, and it's like also it's mutability. So we're preparing for the winter that's coming. Hunter-gatherer kind of energy, you could say, like getting all those gifts in. It's Thanksgiving kind of time. But preparing so that we can last through the cold winter, which is 3 months long. It starts with Capricorn, which is cold, but it's new. It's kind of still like, it's okay. And so it's not really long and hard until you get to Aquarius, where the days are brighter. They're more bright than they were for Capricorn, but it's cold. But it's sustained, and it's long, and it's cold. But it's Aquarius. And so then we move into Pisces, which is still quite dark and still quite cold, but it's a bit more wet and it's a bit more moist. And you've gone all the way around. Whereas the great year goes backwards. Is the short answer. So it goes through Pisces back to Aquarius. So before Pisces, it was in Aries. And each of these chunks, divisions, with its 26,000 years, it's 2,000 years, is it? Per one? Per different division? Something like that?
Yeah, I think I've heard that before as well. Like there, within the great year, there's little chunks of like 2,000 and something years, 2,160 or something like that.
Yes. And so the thing is, I also see that it doesn't go strict to this rule. If we change our vibration, we can jump time. As I say, so you do love what you're doing, time doesn't exist. Like when you're having a fantastic time at a concert, or when you're just going, or when you're in meditation, time slips away. So actually, if we all come together and we all really created the change and started farming, started doing our gifts, our labours of love, coming into a harmonic, we can actually create a golden age. There's been golden ages within the past 1,000 years. They can happen in little bits of the planet, or they can happen all over the planet. I see that actually this is coming back to Bruce Lipton. It's consciousness above genetics. And actually the earth is a crystal which creates gold underneath it. And when you farm it underneath the soil, it creates gold. And so the reason that we have actually all of that gold's been dug up, and we've stopped farming, so it's not been replaced. But if we start agriculture big time, the earth, which we are the offspring of it. We're the children of the earth. We're the fruit of it. If we was to start farming it, not only would we feel great and have plenty of time to do all the other cool things that we do, like get the guitar out, do some art, make love, go swimming, whatever, all that good stuff after just a couple of hours of doing other things. It doesn't mean that everybody has to do farming, but there's plenty of people who love that, right?
Yeah.
I'd like a garden. And so the education of that is there. The physics of that is there. The quantum nature and the spiritual education of it is to say, hey, we could make this commercial. Let's get investors on the case to say, hey, we want people getting JCBs, wells, state-of-the-art homes. We've seen these little pads that can pop up. We're not talking about loads of hippies living in mud huts. We're talking about everybody having equal sustainability and quality homes. Not being swept away by the technology, but utilizing it for us to come into nature more. That's my vision for the alternative.
Right.
To get the sponsorships, to get people who want to still thrive in a market system, but maybe an alternative one to what we've got going on.
Right.
Do you have any more questions before I share the current sky and relate it back to the other sky, and then I'll bust out your chart?
No, not specifically, but I will say, like, I would like to try perhaps restarting the recording, just because you are still lagging, and when you show your screen, I want it to be real time, so like there's no delay in what you're saying and what we're seeing.
Well, I'm going to go really small in the corner. I'm going to keep recording my end because I haven't got the ability to edit them together.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, audience, for persevering with us. It's fine.
All right.
The lag won't be something that you see on the screen share. It's just my camera because it's going through the Ethernet. I notice it a lot on my videos, but it does buff out quite a lot.
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it. Let's do it then.
Don't hold me to it.
Even if so, like, I might be able to edit it myself, because I have the audio recorded separately from the video. And I have both of our audio separately as well. So I have my audio and yours. So I might be able to edit it so I can line yours up with what your video is.
Thank you. I don't mean to put you to extra work. This is something I want to learn more about.
It's just kind of unnatural communicating with you, because I hear your words and then your expressions are a little bit delayed. So it's kind of, it doesn't have that organic type of feel of communication here.
Yeah, well, it bothers me quite a lot, because obviously I would like to be able to do the premiere presentation, and this is something as I work as a professional, as you do as well, I'd like to get that sorted. But for now, I appreciate your tolerance.
Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, well, this is about sharing information anyway, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to interact in real time. Like, we're just putting that information out there, which is what the main point of this is.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
So carry on, my friend.
We'll see that and feel that. I need to ask permission to share my screen.
Oh, okay. I got to allow that somehow?
Yeah, I think actually it might be more helpful. I don't know how you're looking at it, but if you go to gallery view and you can see both screens at once, apparently then you can then toggle that, or from what I've seen before. I'm no expert.
Okay. I'm in gallery view now.
I don't generally favor that gallery view, but it does then allow the changeover of you allowing me to share my screen, maybe.
Okay.
Is that what it says?
I'm in gallery view, but I don't see where I would allow you to share your screen.
Might have to make me host if you can't find the allowance thing, but that shouldn't.
Okay. Make host. Change host. Now it's all you.
So now I just share screen. And so I'm going to basically share I'm going to just show the chart for the eclipse that I mentioned 735 years ago. First of all, you'll look at this. It's just 2017, because I was just looking at something else. So it's not organized or anything, which adds authenticity, doesn't it? And so here is 1284, and I started researching and working on this in 2017. I've been doing videos on it ever since as well, on another platform, which was got 224,000 subscribers on it. So a lot of people did see that information, but it still isn't very broadly known, even by other astrologers, because astrology is such a deep subject. It can be picked up upon. Anyway, so I'm just going to smarten this up a little. It's a little bit of what we would call too much information that's not necessary. Like it's like sound. You've got, if you're doing a sound recording, you're like, it's too much sound. Simplify. Get that going. I was thinking about getting a new computer because it's all about investing in self, isn't it? This is what our friend Ralph Smart says. I think you also said that you didn't resonate so much with Ralph, or he fell away, and then you came back and you were impressed with his growth or his message development. And I like that you said that to him. I think that was really cool.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video of his like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it popped up on my feed because I was, into more spiritual ideas back then as well. But it's not that I didn't appreciate what he was saying. It just didn't seem to have much more to it than, just spreading good vibes, good prana and stuff like that. Like I loved it, but it just never really kept my interest. And I only watched one video. And I don't even know if I watched the whole thing. So I just didn't see him as very much as someone who went very deep into different ideas. I thought he was just spreading the good energy, which was great, but it wasn't what I needed at that time. And then he popped up on my feed a couple of weeks ago, and it was just talking about how we're going through a great change and how we've all been lied to and how people are trying to control us. And I was like, I had no idea he went this deep. I thought he was more of like a mainstream spiritualist that wouldn't go deep and lose followers kind of thing.
Yeah, he was saying some good stuff. Like
controversial stuff.
I imagine he lost a lot of subscribers, and you kind of know you're doing the right thing then as well.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I often have gone through phases where I've said things and I lost subscribers, and I think he did. I completely agree with you. I've followed him since 2008, and I've met him twice, synchronistically as well, like not planned. Cool. So I've got a good rapport with him. However, I agree with you. The way his message changed, he's been very bold as brass. The way that he's been sharing about like, all of these things. Like for myself on my channel, I didn't mention the word COVID for that time when it was such a big scare. At first, I didn't mention it, but the whole time I was stuck with this whole narrative that I've been expressing with you. But I was being much more like the alternative, like the love, the awareness, the conscious awareness of it, but not playing into it. Important for me of not to have mentioned it. I don't mind saying the word now, but I wouldn't even say the word because I felt like I didn't want to feed into it at all. But now see that actually I didn't finish the story. So basically, there's this crowd. I did mention about the king and the queen abdicating. So the corona is actually a smear for the queen abdicating, and there's an actual legitimate king who's claiming to his right to the throne, and his name's Greg Hallett, and I've been doing lots of videos on it, and these videos and interviews of him on YouTube. And the prophecy, as I mentioned, of it is that they'd said that Christ will return through the cloud. Well, internet is the cloud. This guy is saying that he's the Christ lineage. The royal lineage was always said to be the Christ lineage. So Henry VIII was the last. However, he had sex with Prince Anne Boleyn, second wife, who he supposedly killed, but she didn't get killed. She had the son. She had 2 sons. One of them was illegitimate, called Edward, and one of them was legitimately of Henry, called Walter Raleigh, who Elizabeth I, when she got in, eventually, she locked him up in the Tower of London, and which actually wasn't a bad place. It's like a secret palace. He was her favourite explorer and poet, and these queens and that, they kind of keep the jokers along. And this guy was considered a joker, but I'm the Christ. She's like, shut up, you stupid boy. And there's Blackadder, like a sitcom with that playing out. But the guy from, I don't know if you know Blackadder, played by Rowan Atkinson, who did Mr. Bean.
Oh, I know of Rowan, but I don't know of that other thing you said.
Yeah, it's quite. They had 3 series of it, and I was quite young, but my parents loved it, and so it's been around my entire life. This Blackadder, and it specifically goes into different reincarnations through different ages, They go through the Dark Ages, the Elizabethan ages, the Tudors, and the World War II of this reincarnation of Blackadder. And they mention different parts of history, so it's very interesting. Anyway, this is 1284, 735 years ago to the year, and this is the last time that we have Pluto, which takes 240 years to do a cycle, Saturn, which takes 28 years to do a cycle, and Jupiter, which takes 12 years to do a cycle. Saturn and Jupiter meet every 20 years. It's famous. It's called the Great Conjunction. The last time was 20 years ago in Taurus. The time before that was in Libra. The time before that, I don't know what it was, but it was an earth sign. When it happened in Libra, it was the first time it happened in Libra for 800 years. It always does it predominantly, the meeting of Saturn and Jupiter, in the same element. So it would have been that they would have met in Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn for 150 to 200 years. And that brought around our Industrial Revolution, which we've been experiencing and, you know, learning about train tracks and all kinds of good things, right? And so in the 80s, before I was born, in 1980, they met in Libra, which really changed things because it's the first time that they met in an air sign, Saturn and Jupiter. And then it really put a stick in the works for what was a secure system, you know. And it really changed things. We got the home computer. We got all kinds of things. We all got much more conscious of it. However, in the year 2000, they met back in Earth because they kind of have this bit of a do-si-do and predominantly meet in the same element. But on the changeover, there could be this little bit of a window where they have like that. All right. It's all geometry. It's all harmonic, the way that it meets. It's like the way that the Fibonacci pattern of a sunflower unfolds from the center. And so they actually meet on the winter solstice in Aquarius. I'm telling you the end of the story. As we mentioned, I don't do it linear. But that's not, they don't, so we see here, like in this chart of 735 years ago, the Jupiter's at 9 degrees of Capricorn and Saturn's actually at 26. That's a long way apart. And this year, this same as the energy, as I've mentioned, is playing out. However, they actually don't come to the exact degree until the winter solstice. And in fact, that's not even happening in Capricorn. It's happening, as I said, in Aquarius, which is an air sign. And for the next 150 to 200 years, they will only meet in air signs. No more earth, and certainly not of the other elements. No water until the year 2100 and something. Okay?
Okay.
And so what it does is it sets the seal, it sets the energy, it sets the template. Saturn, rules and regulations and traditions, what sign it meets. When it meets with Jupiter, it's bringing expansion within those rules and regulations and traditions. And so this is, as I say, they're setting up a new Iron Fist, a new community. You know, they're setting up all of these realities and experiences. Hello, my mother just come in, and so all of these types of things. And we're setting up the alternatives.
Okay.
Put all that to a side. This is 735 years ago, and we had a full moon lunar eclipse on the Christmas Eve, 2 days after the winter solstice. It's not always that we have the eclipses on the solstices. It could happen any time of year. It just is serendipitous at this time, right?
Okay. Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
I just want to know, I know very little about this, so this is all very new to me. And what I'm looking at here, I've seen, even for people that are listening rather than watching the video, there's a circle with a circle within it, and there's lines going out. We're dividing it into 12 different sections, so I assume that represents the zodiacs. And then you were just pointing to a bunch of little symbols at the bottom. They're all in conjunction with each other, all very close to one another. So what does this represent? What does the circle represent? What does the circle on the inside represent? What do all of these tiny little symbols represent? Draw me back into the basics in astrology. Is the most. You got to treat me like I'm a 5-year-old here. I know nothing about this stuff, and I assume that some of my audience is brand new to it as well. So that's good, because the foundation and the structure is very important. So when you actually talk about astrology as a teacher of astrology, like I am in a sense now, it is Saturnian. And so when you're actually delegating malefically like this, you talk direct.
So, in a sense, through my awakening, when I start talking about astrology to my friends who are not interested, and I start talking like this, they think I'm some kind of supremacist. And they're like not interested and they reject it. And so for me, I've learned through my journey now is that if I want to teach about it, I want to come out like Narco, bust out the guitar and start singing about it or something, you know? And so that's why I'm not dictation. I'm not coming across all Saturnian.
Right. What does it mean to be Saturnian?
Yeah, for now, I'm going to be Saturnian and dead straight and straight to the line, straight to the point. And I'm dropping a few jokes here and there.
Okay, I see.
Okay, and so what we've done is we've moved all this energy to the top of the sky because this is the natural organic zodiac. As I said, we start here on the left-hand side, which on the clock face would be 9 o'clock, where you see me wiggling my mouse.
Yep.
In the chart, we're not actually using this as a time chart right now, but this is called the ascending sign. This is the east horizon where the sun rises, and the sun would go up here in the sky, and this would be the top of the sky, and then it would set here in the evening, right?
Right.
Or it would move away from the local vicinity. And but the actual chart going round is Aries, Taurus, anti-clockwise all the way round to the 10th sign at the top of the sky, which is Capricorn here. And this changes every day through the 24 hours, the actual signs. So it's not always that Capricorn is at the top. It depends on the time of year and wherever the sun is. So actually, if for this to be the case, for the sun to be the top of the sky in Capricorn, this means that it's probably midday in December.
Okay.
Whereas right now, for instance, if we were doing this in 2 weeks from now, the sun would be in Cancer opposite. And, you know, does that make sense?
Not entirely. I don't know. I'm still trying to
on a map basis. I'll do it over another perspective. Directly above me, is the constellation of Cancer.
Right now, you mean?
Always.
But what about when the Earth revolves and we're on at nighttime?
It doesn't. Astrology was built on flat Earth system.
Oh.
And a stationary Earth. And this is why we have stationary kits with rulers and compasses. And this is why we have the Stationers Club, which is what the rules and regulations of society are built on.
I see. So are you of the idea that the Earth is flat?
I say it's fixed and stationary, and it's more of a holographic plane that we are we're on the map of. And
I see.
It used to be that Finland was known as the North Pole and the center of the Earth, but they moved that to Greenwich in London and the North Pole to where Iceland is.
Okay.
And actually, a long time ago, before that, they're saying that we call that the South Pole. So there's lots of things that have been switched around and flipped upside down. But anyway, get to what I'm able to teach you from what I know, because you can check it out for yourself through observation, which astrology teaches about you, where you are in correspondence to what's around you.
Right.
And so I know that Cancer is above me because I know that the stars has got there's particular stars, and we're able to look at it, and I've looked at it for years.
Right.
And so Australia, which is far from here, and I've not been. Above that is the Tropic of Capricorn. And so when we are seeing that we have 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night, which is on the equinox, both spring and autumn or fall, that's when the sun is in Aries or the sun is in Libra. And that would mean that the sun is over the equator, directly above the equator. The Tropic of Aries and Libra is above the equator.
Yeah, I want to understand this a little bit better because I don't know if I'm going to be able to understand everything else if I don't understand this basic idea.
The picture of this map, which you asked, is that the Earth is in the center, and it's a bird's eye view of the sky.
Okay, so when you say that Cancer's always above you, are you referring to the constellation of stars?
Yes.
Now, when I look at the night sky, I see Orion's belt at one point. and it might be at the beginning of the night. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember specifics, but let's say for the sake of argument, at the beginning of the night, as soon as the sun goes down, Orion is far in the east in comparison to my viewpoint. But then over time, it moves across the sky, and then it's far in the west. So how is the constellation Cancer always above you if the sky is always moving relative to you?
Well, because the constellation of Cancer is central to me. It's the most central because I'm in the UK, which is very much in the central of the map. And so
Okay.
the map would be, if the North Pole is like the north, like, you know, Norse mythology. Maybe that's all like Sweden, Norway, all of this kind of thing. And so Iceland, Rikakesh, that is where the North Pole, magnetic north, or what they're calling is magnetic north, is. And that's like center. And so this is the center where the tropical Cancer is. And so when I see Orion go around, it's because the sky does twist.
Yes.
The sky is twisting, but for me, it's not so much. Like, from Cancer's not twisting for me; it's directly above me.
Okay, it's kind of like how the North Star is always fixed.
Yes, and it's also, which they also can change the North Star over time, but it's also concentric rings. So, like, as I said, like Capricorn is really quite big, and it's it's above those, what we could say is the outer lands of Australia. And many astrologers would say that they actually work with a ball Earth. Many astrologers would say that because academically what has been worked out to be the case. And you could actually say that both are possible. Through my journey, before I became an astrologer, cosmology was one of my biggest interests. And I was like, wow, hollow Earth theory, long time ago. And that going into subterranean continents was a big thing that was intriguing for me. And I followed the interesting story of Admiral Byrd, who flew into the North Pole and visited Antarctica. Antarctica's off limits. And so I actually believe there's more land outside and beyond Australia. More land. Like the Truman Show, if you will. And so this is the commercial kind of land that we're within, in a sense. And it sounds so like, you know, entrapment, but it's also like a Garden of Eden. It's almost like a school. They call it the universe, don't they? But also, when we think about School of Fish or Mother Earth or the nursery, what we're doing is that we are being schooled by our reflection. Mamma mia. Here we go again. How many times do we have to see ourselves before we're going to actually digest it? Mamma mia.
Okay, so let me ask you this: like, when I asked you if you seen it as a flat Earth, you said not exactly. You see it more of as a holographic plane. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but I do see the universe as holographic in nature. So I'm curious if you were to get in a spaceship or something and then go beyond our atmosphere, do you think you would see a globe, or do you think you would see a flat plane? Or
well, I suppose
what do you think you would see?
I have to explain the cosmology a little bit more. Like, sometimes, obviously, I wouldn't go into all the explanation about the cosmology, not because it doesn't work, but because it's quite a long explanation in itself without all of the other history. But it's important and it's interesting and intriguing. And so I actually, first and foremost, there's so many whopping fabrications with regards to the globe, and that's a whole subject of debunking within itself, and it's something we shouldn't get caught and snarled up into here too much with regards to diverting from this explanation. But I'm obviously willing and open to spend a few minutes with it because it's important. Shall I share the screen?
That's fine. Yeah.
So basically, the cosmology which I use would be that, I might draw it, that I don't believe in space. And this is funny when we get to this point. You're an astrologer and you talk about the planets, but you're not doing space. You're off your rocker, sunshine.
I think I know where you're coming from. Like, I get the concept. Like, in a sense, space is a similar illusion to that of time. It's something we can perceive and measure, but in itself doesn't have a concrete existence.
Yeah, and I went to the cinema and I saw Joey Tribbiani, what's his name, Matt DeBlanc, in that program, in that movie called Outer Space. And it's like, yeah, this sounds like, listen to the word outer space. Uh-oh, we've run out of space. Uh-oh, what are we going to do next? Really, what I'm seeing is that, yeah, this is outer space. This is the illusion. And in here is inner space. In me and in you. And yet that's the one we've been encouraged not to put our attention on.
Right.
It's talking to yourself. You're having a relationship with yourself, which is the best relationship you could ever have. You're delusional. Singing to yourself in the kitchen. Yeah, you bet I am.
Yeah.
Every night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, that builds rapport. It builds vibration. And it's called centrifugal energy. Because when you go into a centrifugal combustion system, what you're actually doing is you're giving to self. You're feeding back into self. You're giving yourself what you need. And when you make bread, what do? You drag from the outside into the middle. You drag from the outside into the middle. They call it kneading. You give yourself what you need. You drag from the outside in. The same as when in the sunflower, how it grows. Sunflower grows and it opens up beautiful. But the pattern of the Fibonacci spiral is actually a representation of the square, magic square in times table of Fibonacci. So where it comes out, it spirals out from the center and it goes out to the parameter, as Bob Marley would call it, exodus. And so you go out from the heart and you go out to the center seeking, a bit like how we're all out here seeking. There's no harm in seeking. It's great. It's a sand bit. It's a sand pit. This is where we come to create in the physical realm. When we're seeking ourselves, we're coming out to play. However, also in that pattern, in that mathematical Fibonacci sunflower seed, I've got pictures of it somewhere. It's in this geometry book as well, because it's all maths. It feeds back in from the center because it's kneading back in. So some of it's going out and some of it's going in, and it's a perfect kind of dance. Right. So in the middle of May, in the tradition, in the pagan tradition here, they have a festival called Beltane, halfway between the equinox in the spring in Aries and halfway between the Cancer summer solstice. You have Beltane, which is the 1st of May or thereabouts. And it changes sometimes because we're using the Gregorian calendar. It's got more than 360 days. Not a circle. Anyway, so we have the leap years that kind of faffs about. Anyway, so the 1st of May, Beltane, is to celebrate that what they do is they go around the maypole. Everyone gets a ribbon. You do a do-si-do. You don't hang around with one partner for too long. But what you're doing is, over the course of the weave, you go out from the inside and you go in from the outside and you create a pattern, and that creates something of substance. When you're making a cake, you whip it up to create the meringue. It's got such firm, you can hold it over your head, it doesn't fall down. And so that's the same thing. And this is life. It's actually what happens in a womb. It's what happens in a Ouija board. It's what happens in a television box. It's what happens in our eyes. It's the same thing. It's a mathematical scale. It's called light. Walter Russell did the science of light. It's the waveform. It goes up and down. And what goes up goes down equally so. And so this is astrology. And so basically, Aries starts here, it goes up to midday, as I expressed, and it comes down to evening, and then it goes down to midnight, Capricorn, this is Libra, this is Cancer, and it comes back up for the new day. This is a wave form. And so really, this is an atom. And excuse my lack of equality there. This is an atom. And this would be the navel, this would be the temple, and this would be our feet. And so this is a toroidal thing, a toroidal field. Okay. This is our whole body, this is the whole thing. And so Aries starts out always, because you need a spark to start out. Aries is fire, it's initiative, it's Mars. I'm going to get things started. You come in? Nah, fuck off. You're too early in the morning for me, mate. We'll see you later. But Adam, my mate Adam, when the coronavirus started, he went down to the job centre and he got a job at the job centre because he didn't hang around. Aries, he is. His name's Adam. It's funny, isn't it? It's uncanny. So anyway, that's all that. I don't know what I got distracted from, but the waveform goes through everything.
Well, I still don't know where you stand on how you view the Earth. I'm just very curious about that because...
Oh, yeah. I really got lost. So I'm going to go...
You've got so much information that you'll just go off on a tangent on something totally entirely different.
So we can see through the central... I'm going to do a few different drawings with analogies with them. And so we're going to use this blue is where I am in the UK. And we're going to use this orange for like the equator. It's like Florida, it's like Costa Rica, it's like a bit of Spain, it's like all that shenanigans, a bit of Hawaii. Woo! And so that's what's going on there. And then we've got the outer lands, we've got New Zealand, we've got, I've not been, maybe it's a bit of Japan, it's definitely some Australia. And beyond that, you've got your Antarctica and all that shenanigans. So basically, it's for us to share this. The UK and the top half of Europe's this blue circle. And the America's somewhere between the blue circle and the orange circle. Likewise, half of Europe and Canada, right? And so that's there. And so this is like Costa Rica and Peru and all of these good places, South America and all of that, South Europe and all of this kind of thing. And all of this would be Australia, New Zealand, and all of that. Does that make a bit more of an explanation?
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, that is similar to the flat Earth model, but you don't necessarily see it as a flat plane. You see it as this is a 2D representation of a holographic type of.
So I'll get into that metaphysical explanation in just a moment after I explain how I see the planets to work. And this is what was known by the Vedas, and the age of Mesopotamia, which was back before the Roman Catholic Church. This is what astrology, the foundation, was built upon of Mesopotamia, which is the oldest Hellenistic period of astrology, which I know of. Okay. And so this would be, for instance, so the sun sometimes is like in a couple of weeks. The winter summer solstice, we're going to have the sun in Cancer for 30 days, as it is with every sign. So for that, it's going to be right above my head. It's going to be really hot. Probably rain a bit, England, but it's going to be really hot. And also, archetypally, Cancer is the breasts, it's the mum, it's home, it's the people. All of the, I'm a man, I respect the ladies, but all of the yummy mummies are going to be out. There's going to be breastfeeding about. There's going to be prams, all kinds of things. It's everywhere. It's Cancer season. That's the thing. And so it happens every year. It's the Milky Way. And so that's what's going on then. But then the sun going around then, it's a smaller diameter, which means it's going to be moving more fast, the sun. Just talking about the sun itself. Just the sun. And this means that in winter, on my birthday, which is 6 months ago, when the sun was in Capricorn, Christmas time, when we had that eclipse last time, this means that the sun is going to be moving more slowly. And this is nothing like what we're taught, right? This means that the sun's going to be moving more slowly, but on a wider diameter circle. Okay? And so the sun is the star of the show. The others are wandering stars. And so the others follow the sun. They dance and congregate around the sun, like the moon, every month, every 28 days. Mercury, always. Sometimes it's in front of the sun. And the precession of the equinox is our observational point of the sun's path. So where we're observing the sun, and all of the other little ones spiral around it. Just like how we're taught in the normal science. They spiral around the sun in their own cycles, but we're not. There's only one Earth. We're not going nowhere. We're grounded. And so we're here, earthed, present, just like electricity would have you. When you put electricity through a potato, signal and the current only goes through when you earthed down, right? And so we're earthed. We're current, we're present. We can get all lofty, might watch Alien, might watch Men in Black, might watch loads of stuff, might talk like this too much, might get drunk. We might lose ourselves and go up like a hot air balloon. You could even get dead arrogant and go up like a hot air balloon. All kinds of things can happen. We could go head over heels in love. But when we come present, take off our shoes and go walking on the earth, we're grounded. Breath helps as well.
So the Earth is fixed in space.
No, I don't believe in space full stop. None.
Okay. So there's so much, I've never heard any of this before. I've heard flat Earth theory. I've heard the globular theory. And it seems to me that you're somewhere in between both.
Yeah, this is basically the only physical realm is Earth. It's the 3D.
Okay.
And there are other dimensions,
right,
which are spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And they are of the planets, which are vibrational resonant frequencies.
Okay.
And we house them all. They're in the solar system, which is in our solar plexus, inside of us. We're told everything's outside of us, right? It's inside. And so our chakras are the planets.
So, okay, I just got a thought. Okay, so yes, I understand the idea that everything is essentially a projection of our own mind. Would that be fair to say what you're getting at here? So it's a projection of our own consciousness outward. So all the planets are a projection of our own connection to those different energies. So far, so good?
Yeah.
So the same way, even though my surroundings right now, this microphone is a projection of my own mind, I can experience it. I can touch it. I can see it. I can smell it, all these things. So would that be fair to say that if I had a spaceship, even though Saturn is a projection of my own energy, I could travel there and still see it as a big globe type?
No, that's not the way I perceive it. No.
Okay. Please tell me.
I actually see it more to the point of that you can't travel on a space rocket to these places. What you would need is an interdimensional vehicle, and you've already got one. You're sat on it. You're sat in it.
Okay. So you don't think anybody?
I'm not talking about your beautiful chair that you got there.
I know, yeah. Well, I understand the idea of interdimensional travel being through consciousness, and a lot of people will talk about extraterrestrials coming here from other planets, but a lot of the time you will hear them if people channel extraterrestrials. They'll talk about how it's beyond just space travel. It is through consciousness. It is through vibrating at a different frequency. You be somewhere else. But it's not really somewhere else, that it's just necessary. It's not really an illusion. It's not really space, because space means I go from here to here, whereas traveling through consciousness means you just resonate at a different frequency. The same way people speak about how different dimensional beings, maybe like what the West might consider ghosts or something like that, you can't see them because they're not vibrating at our frequency. But if we were to vibrate at that frequency, we could interact with them. So would you say that's similar to how the or the solar system works?
Yeah, completely, 100%. So all of our technologies are imitations of what this body vehicle, which we are incarnated, as I say, into. As I say, this is kind of fun bit of conversation with that. We're spirits incarnated into the physical.
Okay.
And I do this bit because it's a bit like I'm animating like the clay puppet. The clay puppet is made of mostly water, what we're taught, but it's also it's all of the elements. But elementally speaking, earth and water are magnetic elements, or more subtle, or feminine, or dark. All of these labels can be applied, and it depends how attached we are if we want to get all political about it. But subtle is probably the least political way to describe it. I like that subtle word. The earth and water is subtle, but they're physical. They're very physical. They're foundational. Earth is what is a tradition. It lasts time. It's practical. Water is liquid, so you can touch it, feel it. It's transparent. We're predominantly water. That's what actually holds consciousness. They say that you can hold all the movies on from Hollywood on one drop of water, can't they? Something like this.
Okay.
And
All
so,
the information could exist in one drop of water.
yeah.
Okay.
And so in our body, which is made up of cellular membrane, or they say it's trillions or billions, whatever, it doesn't really matter about that number of how many cells, but each of those atoms, which I drew, are a zodiac, which is a zoo of archetypes. What I've been explaining, those 12, because a vibrational tone isn't about all the labels. You can put whatever label you want to call it on it. Call it Sid and Nancy. You can call it Sonny and Cher. All of the signs, it don't really matter. Because it's not matter, right? Or as The Rock would say, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I just go into these things. So culture's not your friend, as Terence McKenna would say, but it does lift the spirits sometimes, because we've all got our own hook.
Attachment to culture, I would say, is not your friend.
I nearly said the word attachment. So yeah, hook and attachment. You took the word out of my mouth, because we've got our tenterhooks into culture, or has it got its tenterhooks into us?
We identify with it. We think it's a part of us. Yeah.
Key word, identify. So the sign that is rising over the eastern horizon is what, if that was on a birth chart, that's what we identify with. Because it's rising over the eastern horizon, it's called the earth sign, the ascending sign. And so that becomes our identity. Aries is all about identity. But for instance, if Libra was rising, as it was when I was born, I identify with all the Libra energy. Me. And so that becomes our predominant kind of caste, because that chart was cast at that time. And the cast is not just all the folks around me in the play, which reflect back to me because they're all miracles, especially yourself right now. And also, it's what holds you together, isn't it? It's just, I mean, I'm not diminishing you, but in my play, you're my support cast.
Right. And you are mine.
Exactly. So when we break a leg, which they say when you go on stage, break a leg, mate, you put a cast on.
Interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? I'm not saying they're broken, although as they say, don't break it. It's not broken to, I don't know, I've bungled. I think we've already showed that I can get these simple things the most wrong, but it's the complex things which I thrive at. Anyway, so basically, can you bring me into some kind of order?
Okay, so we still haven't done my chart. Let's go there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. So I just wanted to finish with regards to the cosmology. Thank you for reminding me. We'll get to your chart.
All right,
and
cool.
I won't keep that hanging too much more on it. And so for the cosmology, with the spiritual, that I explained it with the stars, and this is lots of graphics. If anybody is lost on it, I'll just give you some sources. You can go to Martin Kenny, who built an actual model, a mechanical model of what he perceived as a flat Earth plane to work as, with all of the stars moving above it. It looks like a bit like a whisk, lots of whisks and spinning things with the moon moving. Beautiful moon, which may be non-organic, whatever. There's another conspiracy to go into. Moves every 28 years. Moves every 28 days. There's a whole cycle. Whereas Saturn, the moon's the nearest satellite that we bounce ourselves off of when we look into the sky, right? And Saturn's the farthest satellite, which rules Capricorn, that we can see with our naked eye. And it plays the farther role. It's better high vibration is a non-sexual gender, because it's actually a more feminine sign. It's an earth sign. Just that they've really wrapped it around since the Roman times. Even astrology has got lots of ironing out to do. And the archetype would be non-gender, and you could say it's the farthest from us because it's teaching us how to take responsibility of ourselves as a parent. And the moon is like how to take responsibility of ourselves gently, as emotional. So it's our boundaries and our emotional boundaries, our physical boundaries and our emotional boundaries, right?
Okay.
And so, you couldn't see farther than Saturn. You have to use a telescope. When they finally got one, that's when they saw Uranus, and they're like, "Wow, Eureka!" And so Uranus represents like apparatus, inventions, all the things that are spiritual, like channeling and all that kind of stuff. And after that, you got Neptune, which is more like compassion and spiritual awareness. And then you've got Pluto, which is death. And beyond Pluto, you have the exoplanet Eris, which is, for death is transformation, reincarnation. So beyond that, we have the exoplanet Eris, which takes 500 years, twice as far as Pluto. And that is, as I said, the planet of discord, because it's actually about the highest vibration, timeless, golden age kind of frequency that we've mentioned. And so we don't even talk about that very much, because we're only just getting conscious of it, and just re-remembering ourselves on that level. Anyway, that's real deep. And so with regards to all of that, those cycles just go on and on and on and on, centralized within this plane. Ebbs and flows, like the sun doing its expanded path in the winter and then coming back and doing the smaller one. It goes round and round and round. And that's been going on since we fell into time. I believe we had a conscious fall into time because we started masturbating or something like this. Because in the story of the Kundalini practice, and we'll just get into this now, is that actually every month when the moon travels over our sun position, it is said that's when we release a seed from the hippocampus, from the ram, the cerebellum in our head, and it goes down the spinal column. This happens for the ladies too. It goes down the 33 vertebrae, and once it gets down to the sacrum, which is if you have a cancer of illness or something like that, of lower vibration, then what they do is they take the bone marrow, don't they? Where they get the bone marrow from. And the spine is just an extended part of the brain. It's like the fiber optics. It's very Uranus. It's going right down there. So I don't normally bother with silly jokes like that, but there you go. But so then after that, it goes to the ladies' fallopian tubes, and it goes to the men's gonads, which hang down low. The fallopian tubes are the uterus. They go into the uterus. And also fallopian tubes is THELOPIAN, right? Or F. I'm not a great speller because I'm a phonetic. I'm falling into the trap of language, and so it might be FALOPN. But really, the way I see it and the way I hear it is, it's the Olympian rings. The Olympian rings. It's spelt the same. If you change it's the sounds are the same, but the letters and the icons and the characters are different. But it's about the vibrational sound of letters and language that gives it value and harmonic. So they are the Olympian rings. God bless them. We all came through them because it's like a vortex. It's the natural thing how to jump into time. So you want to come into an embodiment. You're a spirit. You got to queue up and you got to wait, and then you'll manifest within your mother. And deep spirituality says that we play like beyond the veil. We are playing like nymphs and like Cupid, and I want them as my parents. Let's get a bow and arrow. Eros would shoot the arrow at the parent, and then they'd be like, the toughest choice that we have is choosing our parents, and then we're born into that cycle. And we often choose people with the same lineage that have got much karmic readdressing, or in a sense, we could actually be. It's the archetypes that match. It's the resonance of the energy that match. We've got a familiarity. Anyway, that's a deep subject in itself, like twin flames. I think a parent could be a twin flame. A son, a daughter can be a twin flame. It's not necessarily a love. It's something to get clear on. And often it's those nearest and dearest people that we have the greatest disputes with. And that it brings up the most volcanic parts of our unseen, most undealt with trauma. And we do get clear and we do heal. And it's not always ideal, but we do move on and we do move and clear the energy. That's why I'm probably thriving. I get great on all this intelligent stuff, but that's the truth because you can hear the vibration shift, right? Deep. And so yes, when it comes down to, before I get back into sharing the chart, I see that. You are, as we mentioned, you're the center of your reality and I'm the center of mine. Yeah, we share space in the plane, but there is every single moment me branching off into my own quantum reality and you branching off into your quantum reality. There's one where we paused and I went to the toilet. One where you paused and went and got a drink. There's the one where we both stayed here. There's countless, can't count them.
Right.
And so we're not trapped. It's our own choice what we choose to lead. So, for instance, earlier I was talking to you about, well, maybe I will go to explore this country. Maybe I can stay here. And then there's both realities exist. And so we have these different choices, and like this is our choice, and this is a debate. You know, do we have free will, and like, have we chosen it? Well, some people say that we've lived these lives many times. We just come back again and again, see if we can open up and be more loving, and actually stop holding back the love for ourselves and all those around us.
Right.
And that's,
I've considered this myself before, and I'm aware of the idea of every choice we have creates another quantum reality. So I've wondered this myself, and I've never really came to any conclusions in my mind. But do you think it only branches off when we are aware of the two choices? Like you say, you are considering maybe going to America, maybe not. So you're aware of two options. So that creates both realities. But in every moment, there is an infinity of different choices, but you may not be aware of them in that moment. So is it the awareness that creates the other reality, or are there all, from every moment, there's an infinity of choices all the time, even if we're not aware of them?
I feel that there are certain eventualities which we chose to definitely experience. For instance, like 9/11, right? And certain things like where I was, when I experienced 9/11 was perfect for me, and where you were was perfect for you, right? And certain things don't change that. It's how we act in correspondence to certain other things which are more lucid and we can be more creative with. And so we learn through different experiences, like certain people we're going to meet. But it's like how we interact later in that relationship, or in how we deal with different conflict that we get the opportunity to heal. We were like, okay, well now basically the healing always happens with the thing that isn't being demonstrated in this conversation so much, because I keep talking, and this is because this is what we're here to do. But if we was actually hanging out, there wouldn't be any rush, and we could have a lot more space to explain this, a lot more healing, because in the space, it's the 0 point. It's where the change happens. And I got a lot of talking to do. So for me to practice that with breath, it would probably make the conversation about 4 hours longer.
Yeah.
It's very useful when we're actually being compassionate, and my consultations are much more at this pace.
Right.
And so my example is that when we open, it becomes a 0 and opens up the DNA, it opens up the portal for us individually, and we can create change, like in dispute, like, goodness gracious, I'm going to throw this pen or whatever. And then you could just choose to breathe and not act. And that creates the change. Sometimes action creates change, and sometimes non-action creates change. It's just knowing when to do that and when not to, I suppose. And so there is certain things which are over an overlay, which are like consensus realities, which are the subconscious things that play out through the collective. But then there's all our individual production lines. And you could say energetically, it's a foregone conclusion. For instance, your success is a foregone conclusion. All the holdbacks and things, snarl ups, the waiting, all of the relationships which might not have panned out the way that you ideally would have chosen, actually tease you up perfectly for the things that you later experience, except for because we are so, present, that we're taken away. This is actually more of a technological experience, an organic technology that we are within as spirits. It's a bit like this is the Terminator suit, T2000 or whatever they call it. And yet it's the finest technology for us to learn about ourselves through in this reality or in this environment.
I understand that. Yeah, for sure.
I even think that we are probably multiple different races, or if you will, of different extraterrestrial energy. And the word extraterrestrial means that we emanate from beyond the physical. It doesn't mean alien. It could feel alienating, but really we are multiple different channels. And so different streams of thoughts, different parts of the persona, they're all kind of fragmented. And what we are here doing is unifying them.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. I feel like ultimately the who we truly are is that without form, that without character. We are just the pure energy, but we manifest in, like, I want to say an infinity of different ways, but we only perceive a certain limited amount of ways. But the more we open our mind, the more we can perceive different manifestations of ourselves.
And the ones that we react to, the ones that we don't actually respond to, are the ones that we're triggered by, which are often the nearest and dearest, the children, the parents, the best friends, the lovers. They are the bits where we know that we can attend to ourselves more. So, for instance, I'll just give you one example. The other day I asked a friend to come and do an interview with me, someone I've known for 15 years, and she's a yogi. And for me, as I've done a lot of interviews like yourself, like this kind of energy is what we do, and we're quite good at what we do. So for me, seeing her being good at what she does, and we're being such good friends for such a long time, it's a kind of foregone conclusion, no-brainer that you would want to collaborate. But for whatever reason, she's choosing to stick on her own course, which is fair enough. But for me, I'm like feeling, well, is it because she doesn't want to tar her reputation that she's building, because she doesn't respect astrology, or, maybe it's a personal reflection which I can just disconnect to because the story's got its talent into me or hooked into me. But I obviously am feeling depleted by the situation. So for me, it's time to disconnect. So I'd obviously placed my value on her there. Does not to mean that the relationship's over, but it can be reframed. And I really need to reframe myself first and foremost on why I wanted her approval. Give myself the approval first.
Yes. It's very interesting you say that, because I had a very similar experience a few months back, trying to establish myself more and basically make myself available to people for help in any kind. Like, I've always assisted people in my life with understanding themselves better, and emotionally, spiritually, whatever. So I thought, I feel like this is what I want to do. So I wanted to put myself out there as somebody who coaches or guides or whatever. And I asked a series of my friends to give me like somewhat of a testimonial, but like, could you just write a little blurb about how our relationship might have benefited you? And one of my friends, who is one of the more, quote, spiritual people in my life, just basically responded back to me and said, no, I don't think I'm right for this. And my ego was essentially like, does she not think I'm good enough to do this? Does she not want to associate with me because she doesn't agree with my ideas? So my mind went to all these things. Like, I felt disappointed. I felt offended. But when I looked within, I understood, like, it was just because of my attachment to her respect. And I still have nothing but love and respect for her. But I noticed that I was very attached to her approval, because I respected her as a spiritualist. So I thought that she would see me the same way. And whether or not she does, I don't even know. But we spoke after, and we actually talked about it, and we cleared the air. And I was like, in that initial time where you said no to me, I was very taken aback. I was like, I thought you would be one of the ones that would be happy to do so. But I had to check myself and realize I still have work to do, because I still attach myself and derive value from what other people think of me. And that comes and goes. There's times where I don't. There's times where I feel completely whole within myself. But the more I interact with people, the easier it is for me to get attached to what they think of me, because I enjoy their presence. I want them to grow with me. I want to do things together. But then if they're like, nah, I don't want to do that, nah, I'm not into that, then I'm like, oh, that's too bad. And I retract again and come back in. But then it makes me reflect and say, okay, I still have work to do, because I'm still finding myself attached to what other people think. So yeah, it's very cool that we share that experience.
100%. Yeah. Big time for me. That's been a lesson for many years. I had a massive bustling group of, you kind of lose count at around 20 of lovely friends around you. And this was when I started pulling away from that group, because I was taking further inner inquiry, spiritual exploration, studying astrology. And then I would get emotionally triggered because they had no interest in it. And yet I was continuing to broaden my scope of it, in a sense, becoming more isolated, and yet still feeling less and less valued by them, feeling more and more. And it's been a continued lesson of like learning not to care, learning to reframe, learning to have respect for them and see they're on their own path. So then there's this connection which is so similar with you, and I'll tell you how I dealt with it, and it's still ongoing because it was just a couple of days ago for me, and there was a meme that I noticed, and I just sent the meme, and we haven't had the clearing rectification yet, and the meme was saying how it was bitterness, because I'll show you, like, well, this is me acting in shadow in a sense. I said to her, in the meme said, how come it's a bit, I'll give you the gist, I can't remember what the meme said specifically. It's about other people that you do things first for, you always seem to be like last on their list. And so I basically shared with her how I felt, but also then I took my but also I kind of shared another meme, and then I left it, and that was like, it's my own projection, like kind of the gist of it was like, it's my own conditioning, it's my own expectations. So then I retracted. So she knew that and I don't even know if she's seen it. She probably hasn't even seen it yet. And so in a sense that kind of proves a lot of it, and it shows also that I'm now readdressing and taking my power back and made a decision. I know that we're going to be fine. We've been friends for such a long time, and she'll be fine. She'll be a success, and I don't doubt about mine. And I just need to stop even caring. And she even said one day she'll come back around and it'll be perfect for her. And I'm sure that would be great. And imagine if it was to happen in 5 or 10 years, once we're both absolutely, self-sustained with our own homes, built off our crafts. That could be beautiful. I need to be unattached from that. I'm still attaching, aren't I? So we learn so.
It's so easy to. This world is
like, this is a very Libra thing for me. I was born with a Libra rising and a Libra moon, so it's, for me, that's one of my life paths. My life path's not about learning about this stuff. My life path is about touching to people's opinions and values of myself and valuing my opinion about that. When I love doing what I do, I'm good at it, very good at it. But for me, it's a personal journey on my interpersonal self-worth.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So yeah, that's all of that. That shows the reason why I wanted to break down all the cosmology, and also the ability that we're not victims, and that we know that we all have our own reality, because it's quite empowering. And this was the tradition that the Vedas would use. They'd use that cosmology with regards to Earth being stationary, fixed, and that being how the eclipses work. They say that the eclipses are even caused by a thing called Rahu and Ketu, which is like this polarity, which is what caused the eclipses astrologically. They say it's a mathematical point between where the moon and the sun cross over. I actually see that it's actually a physical thing that happens, which actually devours the sun. If momentarily, the sun is actually going through the toroidal field. You know, the hole in the donut at the top of the toroidal field?
Yeah, very familiar with that.
Sun goes through it and comes out the other end, because that's going through the eye of the needle. That's going through the black hole. It's basically just going into meditation. The sun's reborn. And so when I'm doing my videos talking to people energetically about the eclipse, which I'll be doing in a couple of days, it's a bit like, say, the sun is the computer, and you pull the cable out the back of it and you reboot it. And so every eclipse of the moon or the sun, we're rebooting that energy. Likewise, when Mercury or one of the other planets goes retrograde, it's a similar process as an eclipse. It's like rebooting. And so I'm going to share the screen again, and so we can just wrap up the academics of this. And so basically, I showed you this eclipse, and we spoke about how 735 years ago, this was this energy in Capricorn. This is rare as you like. This was a full moon, which means the moon is here at the bottom, and it doesn't really matter about the time of day. And really just showing the sky. So that every full moon is when the moon will be 180 degrees opposite the sun. What's called an opposition. And so what we see is that when we have a full moon, it's releasing. It's a bit like releasing a DVD, ejecting the moon. So it's ejecting where we've emotionally become attached into wherever the full moon is. The last full moon was in Sagittarius. So we're rejecting where we've been emotionally attached and putting our faith into things, right? Because a lot of us have put our faith into the media. A lot of us have put our faith into our flags. A lot of us have put our faith into this or that. And so Sagittarius is about faith, and a full moon there was about ejecting and releasing emotional holdbacks and heaviness with regards to that. And we're still going through the waning half of that cycle. That's how a full moon works. This was a full moon eclipse. And all of this energy in Capricorn I've never seen anything like it. We've got Mercury, Saturn, Pluto, Venus retrograde, Mars, the Sun, Jupiter, and Rahu, which is the head of the dragon. It's insatiable to eat as much as it wants. And so with all of this energy in Capricorn, it was insatiable for a power grab for the Pope and for the Queen, or for the families that are behind them, the Rothschilds and all of that kind of thing, the Knights Templar and all that kind of stuff. And so they had a lot of power of Jupiter stuff, faith, like the Vatican, monetary stuff, Venus, which is that London, and structure, like America, and like, so that's like the three capitals, right? All wrapped in interpersonal relationships, programming, all kinds of things. Very totalitarian, perfect opportunity for them to seize power of that eclipse. And so that's what we learn through, because actually consciously we kind of fell from grace. We lost our spiritual powers. I said we changed the calendars and things like that. So we're kind of walking around outside of our bodies, in the ethers, in the illusion, in the light, rather than going inside of ourselves, which was actually something that we could do equal time inside, equal time outside. Very healthy, as far as I can tell. Don't think I've experienced it in my life. And so what we're going to do now is, so that's a whopper. It was a full moon eclipse. And I'm going to bring us up to the current date. It's just also that chart. If I was talking about it for longer, which I could, it's just so mad how locked in it is. I could talk about that for another hour for sure. But then what we had was an echo to that eclipse, which was on the 21st of December. Which actually was on my birthday. You can see if I can get that chart up. Okay, we go here. This is the solstice, and so it was a couple of days after this, and let me just get that sorted, and then you can see what we've been growing through this whole year, and then we're going to get your chart up, and it won't take too long. So hopefully, I'm not deterring and going on too long.
Well, not at all.
Thank you. So here we go. So this is Christmas Day, as we see here, 25th of December, which is 6 months ago, right? And the new moon is the coming together of the sun and the moon. And the sun is the one that looks like a circle with the orange circle with a dot in the middle, like an eyeball or a breast. And the moon is the crescent, which looks a bit like a moon. And so we can see here, just like the last chart, so I get it sorted. I appreciate your patience. That this was a new moon at 4 degrees of Capricorn. And it was in a conjunction, which means the same. A conjunction is when the two planets or two observational points of witness come together at the same exact place, which is a new moon, a marinading of two energies. It's a bit like a sex, okay? It's just like being present. And so it's laying a seed. It's creating something which is going to last for the whole cycle, which is 28 days with the moon. But also, it's also going to last the test of time. You can actually create a baby, right, in a gestation cycle, Genesis. You can create a project. Depends how you use the cycle, what you do with it. You can lay all kinds of foundations. If like what they did in 1284, they laid a very good, solid foundation for the banking cartel there, right? And for the education systems and for the premise of what they wanted reality to be like. So this 6 months ago was what was going on then. And it was a new moon. And rather than Rahu, the head of the dragon, it's Ketu, the tail of the dragon. And Ketu, the tail of the dragon, is the embodiment of the physical wisdom. It can't see, it's got no head, but it's got all of the cellular membrane and all of the wisdom and experience. And so what this is doing is that we are having a reawakening of our spiritual wisdom and experience, and we're coming in to clear out all of the cells, all of the 9 lifetimes. Apparently in our physical bodies, we carry 9 lifetimes worth of trauma and cellular family lineage.
Okay.
And so what we're able to do is we're finding that we play those out through our personal relationships, and it's just pass me down, hand me downs, which we are clearing out. And so every full moon is an opportunity to feel into those emotions, which we get to release. Every single one of them is an opportunity to release different parts of our own storage center, which is the Akashic records, which is K2, the South Node. So we've all got that in our chart, and this is what causes the eclipses, these horseshoes. And so this eclipse in Capricorn at 4 degrees, right next to Jupiter at 5, with the actual K2 South Node at 8, and Saturn and Jupiter at 20 and 22, happened in December. And this echoes back to the one which we just looked at very much. There's not as many planets in Capricorn, but it's the first time, as I mentioned at the beginning, that Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto had been there. So it echoes back. We got that? Does it make sense?
Somewhat.
Or make
Again,
it a little bit more deep, is that Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces.
Okay.
Pluto rules Scorpio.
And what do you mean by rules? How does it rule?
It's the same energy. And so it's the same archetype.
Okay.
And in a sense, the wandering star, the planetary energy, the electromagnetic sphere of influence that is that energy in the sky, wandering, is the antennae. A bit like how we are the antennae. We're the leading fringe of this conscious evolution, but they're the archons, the planets. And they're the archons, which means that they are reprogramming the archetype, which is the constellation. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, actually, in the original astrology, before we could see beyond Saturn, what we would have as the ruling planet of Scorpio and Aries would be Mars. But since we went and got the telescopes out, we've got Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which become modern-day rulers. Okay? And so when we're looking at the transmutation of the Capricornian archetype, because the rulers of Pluto was Scorpio, which is hidden secrets, occult, taboo, anything that happens in the darkness, or anything where it's shared energy. Because we don't, if I was to go for a meal with you and we didn't discuss that we were going to go splits on the bill, it's taboo. Who's getting the bill? I might think you're paying, unless we have that conversation and clear the air. And so then we know that we go splits, or it might be mush out. And so we find out. And that's actually having open and transparent communication, because Pluto and Scorpio represents murky water where you can't quite see it all. Okay. So it's business and relationships, it's lights off and sex, it's all of that kind of stuff. It actually rules the generative parts of the body. Astrology is originally based on the anatomy. So it rules the groin, it rules the penis and the ovaries, all of this kind of stuff. It also rules the time of the year where the mushrooms grow, the psychedelics. So it's very medicinal. A lot of healing happens in that root chakra of Aries, because it's our identity in Mars, but it's our identity shared with someone else in Scorpio.
Okay.
So when that's in Capricorn, transforming everything, and Saturn rules Aquarius as well, which is beyond time, constellations of people, groups of people, community and networks, social networks. The power of the people is more powerful than the government, really. And they know that, right? That's why Aquarius comes after that. But Saturn rules both. And so also Jupiter, as I say, it's all about faith. It's in between the two. It's all about going above and beyond. It's about the religion that you could say. You could be ensnared by it, but it's also about spiritual exploration, traveling, experience, going on a journey, having a quest. And it's always expanding, going above and beyond. And so all of those energies are being kind of fastened into the traditions. They're being, how do we work with our faith? How do we work with interplay in relationships and business? And so that's what we're seeing be refathomed, because it's been in a paradox, or been in a set in stone for the past 735 years. Yeah, there's been change, but not much. Would you agree?
For how long, you say?
Well, certainly in this cog of time, which I've been referencing, 735 years since the banking cartel have been really big time, but longer than that.
Okay, yeah. Many things have stayed the same, that's for sure, yeah.
Because it was like that was sustained, continued change and expansion. And the thing is, the biggest money grab didn't happen until just the year 2000. There was just millionaires, and then they became billionaires.
Right.
And now they're like, it's just obviously it's a shit show. But now the money doesn't even mean anything. Has lost its meaning. Mean means value. The mean value of a circle is infinitely because the diameter of it is 666, which is carbon, which is what we're made out of, slower vibrational beings. Our atoms are made of carbon when they're in physical manifestation. But when we actually come into a higher vibration, then they actually come into the crystallization or reverberation of conscious awareness, like plasma.
Right.
And so that's very nice. I'm going to get taken away myself there. And so, yeah, this was what was going on then. And now I'm just going to bring it through bring us up to date. And so that fastened it. That was my birthday, literally about 4 hours after my birthday. My son's at 3 degrees of Capricorn. So that just happened to be the case. Anyway, so since then, a week later, we had the conjunction on January the 12th, exactly it was, of Saturn and Jupiter come together. That's when they did the Wuhan, and that's when they made this fake media story, which is what I'm going with it, or pandemic, whatever label you want to slap on it. Some people still like to say it's real. Or maybe they don't like it, but they are going with it. And so I don't really hang around too much about it. It's a whole debatable debate, isn't it? Anyway, a seed was planted, just like I said, the alchemical purpose of two observational points or archetypes coming together, Saturn and Pluto. Secret Pluto behind the structures, behind the scenes. And that happens. That is part of a special cycle. If you read back what happens astrologically every time Saturn and Pluto meet, it's always kind of stuff like this. And then time continued. We didn't really act on it. We didn't give a hoot, did we? And so we carried on going because we were just being kind of optimistic, I suppose. So, I mean, someone said, what's Corona? I said, I don't know, around this kind of time in February, I don't know what it is, it's probably some rubbish, because that was just intuitively what it was. I didn't even start taking any notice of it until they said, I was told off in the cafe I went to for having food from another cafe in there. You could be polluting this space. And I was like, wow, they're taking this shit real serious. I need to have a little look what's going on. And my mum was like, she's more traditionalist. She was obviously seeing it on the media, on the TV and all this. And so I was like, oh gosh, I didn't know what it was going to be until it was going to be. So really, obviously I was also swept into it. And so this didn't actually finally take big strike until March, which is when Saturn finally went into Aquarius, where it hadn't been for 28 years. As wherever Saturn goes, it's never been there for 28 years. It just goes back and forth a bit, but it hadn't. And so then we see also the Sun and Saturn, both at 29 here, within a couple of days, they both went into new signs. And that would be the beginning of a new zodiac year. Aries, the Lamb, first born again. The Sun enters into Aries. And then it was 2 days later that the Saturn went into Aquarius. So what that is, organically, if there was no other big scandal or any smear, it's a fantastic opportunity to rebirth our identity and gather together and structure new collectives. Let's go teach. Let's make a festival where we give music, yoga, healthy eating, astrology, all kinds of things. That could be organized right here, right now, without all of these distractions.
Right.
When you get distracted, you get taken off your groove, a bit like a scratch on a record. You're like, oh gosh, I've just lost traction.
Right.
And so that's very well organized. We already did all the analogies with Venus and the crown actually being a corona story, which was thrown into the collective unconscious, because that's what Pisces is. And so Mercury was here, media, look, and it would go retrograde. They'd be like, "What's it true? Is it true? Of course, it's not a fucking lie. How dare you even question the narrative?" That's what we went through for a long time, and it was boring, right? It went on way long. And still, that fact that it is going on, it's just hysterical. And so we kind of get beyond it. But here is the thing that happened, because I showed you the new moon that happened on the Christmas day, or whatever it was, Boxing Day, depending where you are. 6 months later, if you're actually going to do anything within a lunar cycle, you wait the first week. Farmers would tell you this because they're growing good crops, right? And they'd use astrology. And so the best time to act is a week into the cycle, 90 degrees, which is a 90-degree angle, which is the same energy of Mars or Aries. 90 degrees is when you act. And so that is a quarter of a circle, 25% of a circle. And so it's, as you can see, this is Capricorn to Aries. And so where we are moving towards, opposite of Capricorn, would be Cancer. This is 90 degrees in between the two. It's the spring equinox, 12 hours a day, 12 hours at night. Whereas back in Capricorn, it's bloody dark all day. Whereas, right here, right now, it's light all day. Hardly any dark. Have I made my point?
Somewhat. Again, this is like, I feel like I'm lacking some fundamental knowledge, and that's why this is all a little bit over my head.
I'll break this down more simply. So 6 months ago, we had the eclipse, but it was 3 months ago, we had this new moon, which I'm sharing with you now, which is slap bang between the two.
Right.
So with these red lines, they're both 90-degree angles to where these horseshoes are. And that's where the eclipses happened.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So basically what you're demonstrating the connection between everything that's occurring planet-wise and how they sit within the constellations to the behavior of the world at large, essentially.
Yes, correct. And individually, as a collective and as individuals, as vast as we are. The ruling planet at this time of this new moon is always, in Aries, is Mars. Mars is up in Capricorn at this time. And I tell you, the weeks before this, I was like, everybody was like, oh gosh, Mars has got to make it past Jupiter and Pluto. What's going on? Well, everyone was closing down their shops and stuff, packing up work, because we were being told by the government, the authority, to do that. And in a sense, that was quite, you could say, disempowering. It's actually, it's closed down a lot of people's businesses, and they might not ever get them back. But which is actually truly a gift, because maybe they get to find that they get to reconnect with something that's better for them, or more enjoyable spiritually. Over they might disagree and say I'm fucking ignorant, excuse my language right now, but overall the whole arc in time, as it rolls out, I do think that that's going to be the case.
Right.
It's just fortunate some people that have already chosen to do this, like choose their own, like empower themselves to their own trade. People who've done that are very empowered right now. This has been sometimes maybe one of the best years for some people. And so because we've actually done the thing about the distraction, we already done a lot of the work before Saturn came into Aquarius. I'm talking about myself in a sense, and other people have already done the work. This is a time to thrive. It's great. It's fantastic. It's exactly what we've been waiting for, but there's a lot of distractions, and the idea of them not allowing us to travel and having to get special passports and vaccines, that is ball ache that a lot of us were scared about, and it brings your vibration down. You start thinking about it, start wasting time, start getting distracted. It's just not, it's been massive distraction, but they still tits it up a lot, because everyone's just like, nah, we're not sticking for it. And everyone wised up to Bill Gates, everyone wised up to all of this thing, and it really came down very quickly for a lot of people, even though some people still snarled up in it. So thing is, with this one, which happened on the just a couple of days after Saturn's ingress, 4 days after Saturn's ingress, so we're 4 days into this spring officially here, we had the new moon in between the winter and the summer, and this is 3 months ago, and it's in a conjunction with Chiron. And because it's 90 degrees from the nodal axis, which creates the eclipses, when that happens in astrology, what we call it is a karmic misstep. So when I show you your chart in just a minute, I'll share if you've got any karmic missteps. They're not a bad thing. It's a bit like a stepping stone. I've got to sing, I'm your stepping stone. And so I've got that out of my system. The stepping stone is something that we can find that we can utilize through various different parts of our life experience, when we're young stars, when we're old stars, and all in between, because we're learning about how we can move towards a bit of our lives where we've got least experience individually, which is for us as a collective, wherever Rahu is, or for us as individuals, wherever Rahu, the North Node, is in our charts. Okay? And so I saw this coming, this new moon, not knowing the storyline, and I'm like, wow, this whole lunar cycle squaring the nodes exactly 90 degrees, well, it's 89 degrees square, which is very tight. And it's conjunct Chiron, which is the centaur, which is an asteroid beyond Saturn, before Uranus, in the asteroid belt. And so Chiron represents the spirit which is manifested in the physical, dealing with the consequences of being familiar with being a spirit, but having to deal with having a body, having to deal with the physical world, the bills, the upkeep of wiping our beautiful derrieres, for feeding ourselves, and all of these kinds of things, right? It's something quite to get useful. The physical world isn't ideal for us spirits, but that's what Chiron represents. Another analogy is it's the medic in the medic field. It can never quite completely heal itself, but it can help everybody else. So Chiron is the healer, the centaur, but also the maverick. So for the new moon in Aries to be conjunct that, it's about having to be a maverick with our own identities and actions. And so that's what we were learning with. For me, myself, I'll tell you how I acted at that point. I actually stopped the cafes. And so I stopped getting my bus ticket and I just kept going on, kind of like foolhardy, head first, like Aries. And I was like, I'm going to walk out in nature every day. I'm going to go to the gas station to get my coffee. And I'm going to sit in the bus stop. I'm going to have my coffee there. And I'm going to keep my head up. And I'm going to make this work for me. And we all did what we had to do for ourselves in that time, right? What were you doing? You might be asking. How did you deal with this time in March?
March. We're looking at March 24th here.
When they were in lockdown, like when they're saying, like, because apparently the Queen actually abdicated on the 31st, a few days after this.
Mm-hmm.
And officially, the government took power of the UK on the 31st of March. But she went back to her castle, and it was on the news. Queen's gone to Scotland just to play safe so she doesn't get coronavirus.
Right.
And so it's used as part of the spell.
I can't remember specific, like at that point, because sometimes I can't remember what I did earlier on in the day. So to think back to March 24th is a challenge for me. But I know around that time when the lockdown was really being put into place, not a lot of change for me, because aside from not having to work anymore, one of my jobs I got laid off from. But I didn't do much
that
different.
Happened to a lot of people, didn't it? Everyone got laid off their jobs. And so a lot more time on our hands to be like, okay, well, maybe finding things like working out in the house, or you maybe doing more things like with your platform.
Yeah. That's when I really started focusing on my podcast and my website and all that. And I really started putting all of my time into things I wanted to do for myself.
This is going to be really interesting when we look at your chart in a minute, because we can overlay what we've already looked at. Because this is turning into quite a deep overview of it all, and it's quite interesting. Thank you for holding the space.
And I just want to let you know that I've only got about a half an hour left.
That's fine. What we could do is we'll wrap it up, and we're basically, just before I move on. So Mars rules the chart, if you will, because it rules the Aries, and so Mars at this time was in a conjunction with Pluto and Jupiter, like where they are at now. They're still together, Pluto and Jupiter. Saturn have moved on. And Saturn will be coming back. Mars isn't hanging around for no one, never does. Because it's like, beep, beep, I'm coming through. It moves quite fast. It's not that fast, but it's not as fast as the Sun and the Moon or Mercury or Venus, but it's still faster than all these slow boys, if you will.
Okay.
And so Mars is actually currently in Pisces, and will actually eventually, in a week or so, enter Aries, where this new moon happened. So anyway, the Sun's cleared right off, is in Gemini, and we're preparing for the next lunar eclipse. next for the solar eclipse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up to that, and we can see where we're at in the overarching story. And we see that actually this is a really big eclipse with regards to how close it's happening to Rahu, the head of the dragon. And so they don't even have to be that close for it to be an eclipse. But because this is so close, you'll be able to see a ring of fire, a bit like what Johnny Cash sang about. I thought he was talking about a curry, but apparently maybe he was talking about an eclipse. And so here we have this is the sun and moon coming together directly opposite where they did in the winter. That was at 4 degrees of Capricorn, but this one's at 0. Right on 4 hours after the summer solstice, the moon comes to the exact moment of the sun, and because it's less than a degree from Rahu, it's just very, very powerful. And there you go. Okay, and so basically, it's planting a seed there, and Saturn. By the time that it gets to the full moon, I'll just show you 2 weeks after the full moon that we have, the next full moon is in Capricorn. And you see that Saturn's moved back into its home sign of Capricorn, next to Pluto, next to Jupiter, which are all retrograde at the time of the full moon in Capricorn on July the 5th, 6th, depending where we are. And so that's releasing a lot of all this false bullshit that we've been living through and giving us the opportunity with all of the planets retrograde, including Mercury in Cancer, that we're able to recreate the structure and redetermine our own authority, authorizing our own narrative and our own philosophy on life as we come together through greater perspective of all that which we've been learning about and all that which has been unveiled for us and shall continue. I mean, I can't really project too far forward about what's going to happen between now and then. There's so things that are changing day to day. And sometimes it's just most important to know about this stuff, but to be focused about what we're creating day to day.
So you anticipate that at this point, as showing on the screen here, July 5th, that we're going to start to really shift to other structures in general.
I think that that's very true. And also because it's 2 weeks after the solstice new moon eclipse, where they may, I'm not going to scare anyone, but there's the opportunity that they do false flags or false narratives or medias to start closing down us, pursuing our alternative avenues.
Right.
Really, to social distancing is the thing, but they say media distancing is the key.
Yeah.
But also not to the point that one's ignorant. So it's good to be aware. I don't need never to watch it to be aware because you hear it from other people.
Yeah.
And so here we go. How do I spell your second name, or just quote it for Michael?
My last name is Dunphy.
Dunphy. And may I ask your date of birth, please?
November 30th, 1988.
Okay. And the time, please?
4:20 a.m.
Awesome.
I know, right?
So that's really different vibe. Where was this?
It was in Goose Bay, Labrador, Canada.
Cool. So it's really good that we got to lay it all out like that, because that's the academics, that's the collective, and this is obviously you. It's different energy. I'm going to have to ask. It's Labrador.
Yeah, well, the province is called Newfoundland and Labrador. Labrador is the landlocked portion. Newfoundland is the island.
Labrador City, Newfoundland.
No, well, the town is Goose Bay or Happy Valley Goose Bay. There you go, Goose Bay.
Goose Bay, Newfound, Labor, and Labrador.
Yes, Newfoundland and Labrador. Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Just need to change one more thing. We're not quite there yet. And it is more exciting when I do charts sometimes for people who who don't tell me much about themselves or who are new to astrology. And other times I do charts with people and they know all about their astrology, and it's always a different journey. And there's different ways to do it. And I like when people, obviously I know a little bit about your story, and but not too much. And so this is useful for the validity of astrology, I suppose. And so here we go. What I've done is I've added all the information. So you were born at 4:20 on the 30th of November 1988 in Goose Bay, Canada.
Yeah.
Well, when you were born, the ascendant sign had just changed. It changes every 2 hours because there's 12 signs and 24 hours. So on average, they spend about 2 hours on the horizon. And whether it's the western or the eastern, all right? And just to clarify, with regards to what we were talking about cosmologically, I don't see the sun ever sets and goes underneath the earth.
Let me stop it there for a second. I don't know if this matters to the chart in general, but you spelt my last name wrong.
Oh, excuse me. I'll correct it. Even though you spelled it out for me.
You forgot the N.
D-U-N.
Yeah, D-U-N-P-H-Y.
I'll get that correct. I'll send you a copy of this as well, so you can have it.
Cool.
Yes, so I just want to explain. I'll get this at the map out. I'm not going to have to go full screen. I think you can see me in my little window. My analogy.
Yep.
And so, if the sun's rising in the east, going over the sun of the day, and then setting in the west. And on the globe model, it would go under the earth, right? Or the earth would spin, and it's just like oh my God, that's so spun. And the reason we don't do globe earth is because it means you're meaningless. It means you're following a star, it's spinning in the middle of nowhere. It means you're not the center of anything. And that's why we're, in a sense, our condition through that kind of spell means that we're just going to work for the man quite happily, because it means I've got no spiritual definition or distinguishment. So it's a very valuable magical trick that they do there. And so it takes away all meaning of our own being centered. We don't feel grounded. It loses it all. It's a very discombobulating situation.
I've heard that before when I've researched the flat earth. They say that
the best spiritual reason, a lot of the flat earth people will say, it's just because of this. You can check it out for yourself with the this and the that. And yeah, that's all true. You can. But the most powerful reason is exactly that one, because it takes us away from being the center. And even that the thing is, we are centaur, like Chiron in the asteroid belt, like Sagittarius, which is depicted as half god, which is a human, and half horse, because the physical flesh is the beast, and the god bit, spirit, is depicted as a human. But actually, that's the intangible, quintessential thing that's coming through you and I that we channel. Okay, and so we are the center. We are centaurs, and centaurs are spirits incarnated into the physical. Anyway, so I see that actually the sun always moving across the plane is actually when it fucks off. So excuse my language. When it's gone so far away from us, and it's not warm, we can't see it. It's just not local. It'll be back tomorrow. And so it goes on its journey and it covers the land. It's like incubator.
Right.
Okay. And sometimes it's all local as well. So all of these planets you explained in outer space, they're all really local. And the sun and the moon are really roughly the same size. Venus, they're all really tiny. You can't go land on them, but you can meditate and you can go to them, as far as I can tell as well, vibrationally, and even physically experience them. But that's something I've not done. And it's something which we will all be learning about, I would imagine. That's where I'm at on it. And I believe in like hollow earth planes and all kinds of things. It's all a lot inside. We are really on the cusp of great awakening and being able to broaden our exploration through time as time travelers as well through this, because time is something that is non-linear, and we can travel it when we go within ourselves, because we're stars. Astrology, astro, is basically the star, and ology is wisdom. Anyway, let me get into your chart. So, so this is if you were born any earlier, like 5 minutes earlier, it would have been a Libra rising, but you weren't. And so you're Scorpio rising, 0 degrees, which means any time that anything goes into Scorpio in the current sky, it's instantly on your ascendant. So it's the moon every month is going to go over your ascendant when it goes into Scorpio. And this October, the sun will. And it'll probably be actually that Venus does actually go over that space first, because the Venus will probably be leading the charge, or Mercury by that point. Okay?
Okay.
In fact, it's Mercury this time. You've got Venus in Scorpio as well. Venus is at 8 degrees of your first house. I have also got Venus in Scorpio, just for your knowledge. And so Venus in Scorpio is actually seeing the value in things that are occult. You identify with things that maybe most people wouldn't, the unseen stuff. Also sex, like you might find that you are into exploration of things that you see the value in sex, sexual exploration. So really Venus rules Libra and Taurus. So really to look at it more, you'd like to think, okay, well, where is Libra and Taurus in the chart? Well, Libra is the sign before Scorpio. And so it's the 12th house. And so you love exploring your own consciousness, the value and the depth of your own perspective and perception. But also, it's like belief systems, layers of, as I liken it to when we change the reel at the back of the cinema, we're changing the reality when we change our mind. Like we're our own programmers when we can get cognitive like that. Venus also rules the sign opposite Taurus, which is your descendant. You've got no planets in there, all that, it doesn't really matter. And so it's the value of how other people's perspective you really appreciate as well. You've given me a real big chunk of your time today, even though you're not really exactly infatuated with astrology. You've got intrigue into it because you see that it's valuable for me and other people. And so you want to learn more about it, right?
Yeah. I like to learn about everything.
Yeah, so that's broad and considered, because the 7th house where Taurus is about other people's perspective. It's about other people's observations, same as Libra in a sense, because that's that area of life, a bit convoluted and deep. So you're able to see the quality of other people through observation and witness. You could say you're a good people watcher, which is very scorpionic, right? Because a scorpion would wait in the cracks for the safe time or the opportune or the very most meticulous time to make its move.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you were at a disco and there's beautiful ladies or men, whatever you fancied, you could choose for the opportune moment to make your charming move. And I'm sure you do.
That's actually kind of funny you say that. In my days when I used to frequent the discos, as you say, I was very patient and watched from the outskirts, and then I wouldn't just approach a woman just because I found she was attractive. I would, I would feel the room and wait for the opportune time, or, I'd had to feel some sort of connection beyond just a physical attraction first before I would approach someone.
And even sometimes you might have been astounded because actually through your holding space, like what we said earlier in silence and the gap, that actually creates magnetics, which is the one thing which we're not taught about much, because it's the true magic that happens always in darkness or spaciousness. When you give someone space, what you do is you become radiant and ravishing, and you create an attraction like a magnet, and you probably drawing them into you.
Yep.
Same what happens with anything. It doesn't have to just be sexual play. It can be business.
Yep, that's very accurate as well.
So that's cool. And it's all about business and very valuable people that you can connect with through observing the right people to connect with. I mean, you were connecting with me now. I'm not going to get the trumpets out. So, but I really am grateful. I just was like, for me, I can be self-diminishing in that way. If I was to hold it, I could have been arrogant for a couple more seconds there, But Venus is actually at full here. I'll just to give you a little quick lowdown, because it's just after its sign of Libra. week ago, it would have been in its sign of Libra. The other side of the sky is its sign of Taurus. So it actually struggles in a sense in Scorpio. It's not a bad thing. I'm not putting the willies up you're giving you a scare. I've got it in my natal chart too. And we can make it work for us once we learn, but we also can feel the diminishment or the undervalued, not seen qualities of it as well sometimes. Might have to try a little bit harder sometimes for things. We learn the lessons of that and to actually give ourselves the value, as you say.
Okay.
Would you say that's been an experience you can relate to as well?
Could you say that again?
Sometimes because Venus is farthest from home at this point, it's going to have to travel all the way through Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, where it loves to be, Aries, and then finally gets back to Taurus. It's the longest way it's going to travel back to its home space. So it can be that it has to try extra hard to be seen.
Well, yeah, I would definitely connect that to aspects of my life. Most of my life I found as if I was trying too hard to be seen. Now I don't very much have an attachment to it, but yeah, that definitely would describe most of my life. Probably the first 25 years, I was always trying to give myself some sort of personal value by being seen and accepted and understood by others.
Well, sometimes it takes as you say, 25 years. 27, 28 is a Saturn return, when Saturn will return back to the same space for all of us. And so it's a very big initiation. It's actually what I would say when we finally become adults is that time then. And so for us, the penny to drop and then to actually learn how to carry ourselves with that kind of grace takes, until we're kind of where we're at now. We're still learning, always learning. And so we learn, as you say, to stop reaching out, and then we get more magnetic. People see the value in us. A bit like my friend example earlier, she still might not want to collaborate. You were in the same situation. It's like, geez Louise, have I not proven myself by now?
Yeah.
And so we can relate and we can get hooked into the dramas and the personal stories and the woe is me, but we know actually we've done the hard work, and our product eventually speaks for itself.
Yes.
It's undeniable when you apply yourself through the test of time, because you know that actually you're manifesting.
Yep, I very much agree with that.
Okay, and so the ruler of your chart is 2. There's 2 rulers. As I mentioned earlier, before we got telescopes, it would be that we couldn't see beyond Saturn. So Mars would rule Scorpio in ancient astrology. So Venus is in Mars's sign, which obviously tells you a lot there. Regardless. So we look to Mars and we look to Pluto, which is the modern day ruler. Firstly, we check out Mars. Well, Mars is just laughing at my tone there. Mars is actually in its home sign of Aries, which we kind of explored a little bit earlier, right? But that's good, because Mars is in somewhat of a distinguishment there, and it's the chart ruler, and it's in the 6th house. And the 6th house means the area of the chart that we are doing our day-to-day rituals, how we're dividing up our time, how we accrue our time, how we apply ourselves throughout the course of our day in our routines. It's also our health and how we act in our health. It could say that you're very active with your health because you've got Mars in it there, and naturally a Scorpio will always have Aries there. That's just the way this works, the archetype. And so you're having extra gusto to how you act, because the first house where Scorpio is, it's all that you identify with. You're acting on that which is in your first house, which is this Venus stuff and this Pluto stuff. So you're acting on the observation of you and of other people, and also the quantifiable nature of your own discrimination of your own actions in your day-to-day experience. You're very philosophical, but in a very practical way. That makes sense?
Oh yeah, that's exactly how I would describe myself. I like philosophy. I'm all about thinking deeply about certain subjects, but I like to understand them in a way that I can explain them and really put them in a practical sense.
We'll probably see a lot more of that as we get into the other things. These are personal planets, Venus and Mars. So Mars represents, as Austin Powers would say, a second Austin Powers reference, Basil, would be he wears it on his necklace, right? Venus and Mars.
Right.
It's about penetration. It's the phallus. I'm going that way. I've got direction. I've got an erection, and I'm going that way. It's not always about having the libido active, but it's actually when we act on things like that, we don't get frustrated. But if we don't take the action, we can be incredibly frustrated.
Right.
Which is a lesson for me right now. And so I'm learning to make actions rather than to put them off because of fear. Right. And so Mars rules the chart. It's in all of the lines are here, geometry. And so a red line here is 90-degree angle. You can actually check it out with the maths of the actual numbers. But the blue line's more flowing. And so a red line is friction and tension, kind of like Mars. It's I'm going to get started. Whereas, the blue is like, well, I don't really have to move now. It's easy. You don't really get up with your feet, that kind of thing. So it just flows. So just to give you a little background on that. So Mars is in this energy at the beginning of Aries, cardinal. I'm going to get up and act in my day-to-day actions. You're probably not a lazy person. But it's in a 90-degree aspect to your Saturn, 1 degree of cardinal Capricorn, which is next to your Neptune. And also Chiron, which opposes your Saturn and Neptune. This is what we call a T-square. And so you're able to act and communicate spirituality. I'm going to use that word, or consciousness. I'm going to use that word. Neptune stuff. Basically, you're able to structure it, Saturn, in your repertoire, in your communication. You're able to take authority on that kind of stuff. Neptune rules Pisces, which is your 5th house. And so for you, it's all kind of curious for you to explore, because we've got Rahu here. It's your least explored area of life. And so for you to be able to communicate in a very creative way about things which are very Piscean, which is kind of things which you put your faith into, like biblical stuff, but also consciousness, like the kind of things that we were talking about, your science in a more conscious way, like what we were talking about with Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, that kind of thing. But Pisces is also about service and like monastery, all this kind of thing. So I basically say that you're able to channel this great consciousness in a really well-structured form for your communication. But sometimes it can be against your belief systems, which you've been brought into and indoctrinated in by your family. Because Cancer's family. Or
I see, okay.
Or your homeland. But it's here that you got Cancer, and this is in the 9th house, belief system. So you're always learning about the holdbacks of the family structure, not supporting your own exploration in a sense. It's not to say that they weren't supportive, it's just like you had to take the action upon yourself. Mars, in between this sin, excuse me. And so Mars is like, I'm just acting on it, even though sometimes it might cause a little bit of facing the trauma or facing the unease or facing what it feels like to be a spirit growing in a template which is slightly uncomfortable, the physical world, or with a narrative which is traditional, which doesn't fit my current vibe. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
The moon in Leo as well here. This is a bit convoluted, but the moon, because moon rules Cancer. So the moon is at 28 degrees of Leo, ruling the 9th house. The moon rules Cancer. And so you're always able to be creative and structure your belief system of your family because you can see it through its well structured. It's not to say it was idiotic. People have got their reasons, and society has its reasons to keep things the way it does, and you can see the reasoning behind things.
Yep, definitely.
you can see how the world would even nurture in a way. Like I talked about a lot of the conspiracy today, and I talked about a lot of the governmental structure. You can see how that is actually supportive and nurturing for the world as well, from a different stance. Probably,
yeah,
talking the different line of thinking.
Yep, definitely agree with that.
And so the sun rules Leo, and the sun is in Sagittarius next to Mercury, and it's in your second house, and it's in a trine to your midheaven, which is the top of the sky. That's really when you want to aspire towards the top of the sky. And so you're inspired to move towards what you can do in the world. And that brings you into your heaven. It brings you into your temple for the world. And so you're able to nurture yourself with your creativity. Moon is nurture. You're able to even help the people in the land. You're able to help your family broaden their conception of things and teach yourself and your family through your valuable exploration of different people that you connect to in your community and different people that you open up to and communicate with. How does that feel for you?
That all sounds totally accurate to me, honestly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get into a few more bits with regards to some things, and then we're going to go on another train of thought with it. Okay, just for a moment.
Yeah.
So this Saturn, which we mentioned here, which is a big, Saturn's powerful. It's our authority and it's our structure. It's your voice. It's distinguishment. People stop and listen to you, don't they?
Yeah, that's pretty common. Yep.
I was a busy man the day I stopped to listen to you. I had an appointment. I was walking really fast. I was hot and bothered, and I kind of stopped and I listened to you while walking a little bit more slowly. And it was important for me too. And I actually think I wanted to talk to Ralph myself, but I ended up jumping out the convo after you talk and just following you and then moving on with my day. And then sending a message to you, because Saturn it commands respect. And so you kind of command respect.
It's good to know.
And because it sextiles your ascendant, you bring it in a way, and also your ascendant next to Venus. You can do it in a way which is gracious. And it's not like some Saturn would be like, I'm not listening to you, mate. You're boring and crusty. You're like, but like you bring consciousness and empathy and compassion to your Saturnian structure.
Very cool.
So the other modern day ruler of the chart, just skipping all that now, is Pluto. Go back to the start. And so Pluto is here in your first house. You're able to transform your own values and your own identity. And you're able to transform how you feel and think about yourself, or how you feel and think other people see you by witnessing others and then changing it as an alchemist from within. Kind of thing. It's nocturnal, your chart, because you were born at 4:20 in the morning and the sun wasn't risen. But the moon was top of the sky, which means you've got a lovely, was nocturnal chart, the moon top of the sky, very nice. And so the quality of your moon and the way that you familiarize yourself with different avenues of philosophy without being attached to one or the other so much, so that you can have the opportunity to be open and see the unifying perspectives, for
yes, of course.
for what works for you, right? As I say, eat the fruit and spit out the pips.
Yes, indeed. Yep, that is definitely a skill of mine.
Okay, and so look at a few other bits of the chart. Jupiter, which is the ruling planet of Sagittarius and Pisces, is actually in Gemini, retrograde in your 8th house. And so
what does it mean to be in retrograde?
Recreating any REs, re-establishing, redeterminizing, rectifying, anything you can think of with an RE. So, and with regards to the archetype of Jupiter and Gemini in your 8th house. And so 8th house, as we've discovered, is, well, not done actually. 8th house is the same as Scorpio and Pluto. It's business and relationships where we share our energy and identity with other people and not knowing where the biting point is.
Okay.
Like the analogy I did with the meal. Or, for instance, will you roll over? This bed's 50% mine. And so there's that. But here you're seeing Jupiter, and just like what I said with the other parts of the chart, you're able to see both sides of the coin with regards to people's belief systems and your own and the populace. And for instance, how I explain how astrology can be done academically and spiritually, and you can use it as a globe and it will work with regards to describing it like that, but it's just not empowering. It's not as empowering spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And so your reality, for instance, I'm talking like our reality can be a ball Earth spinning around, not important, going to work for Walmart, or we can put ourselves back in the center of it and we say, hey, I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to be my own source. It's like that's the flip in paradigm there in regards to it, and seeing astrology can look at it from both perspectives. Anyway, you can do that with it because Jupiter is seeing both sides of perspectives. It might not even be about philosophy. It might be about something much more simple about my values, because Jupiter is here. So my value is that actually I like soccer, and I'm not going to call it that because it's called football here. I'm in England. So, but you'll be like, hey, you might have always called it soccer. You might have been growing up playing soccer all your life, but because you respect me, you might call it football when you're talking to me.
Yeah, that does sound like something I would do. Yeah.
Most people wouldn't bother. They stick to their guns and they call it soccer.
Yeah.
For me, I just might wind you up and call it soccer and go with calling it soccer as well.
Yeah.
Like, I might play with that as well. That's the kind of thing I like to do as well. So that's because it's the value. You know just other people's values and virtues, and you'll be able to see different sides of their experience and be able to meet them on their level with that.
Right.
Which is very powerful. Especially as Mercury rules your 8th house, you're able to be creative with how you can compassionately meet people on their level, even if it's not necessarily your own belief system for a moment. One example, I met someone on the bus. She was moaning about people being too close to her because of the virus scenario, and she had a mask on and she was annoyed about it. And I'm thinking, you're talking to the wrong person here about it. So I just responded and said, I think it's great we can have a conversation without wearing a mask. I didn't even mention whether the people were right or wrong or not. So that's kind of diffusing, it's harmonizing. I kind of give her a compliment, but I didn't tell her that I thought she was absolutely crackers. It's not crackers, it's just the narrative is really harsh.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's where that is. And so the bottom of the sky is the IC, opposite the MC, and so that's your root. You're rooted into your community. You're rooted into connecting with people in networks and spheres of influence. And you can be seen for your emotions with the moon in Leo, and you can be very creative and sensitive, a bit like the lion and the Wizard of Oz. It's like very sensitive, but is also very creative and supportive. So when you shine your light on other people, like the sun shine, people just, the sun shows up day in, day out, no matter what season it is, whether it's a long day or a short day. The sun's going to be there at noon, whether there's clouds in the way or not. And so when you shine your emotional support on other people as a moon in Leo, it's very warmly appreciated and felt.
That has been my experience for the most part, yeah.
That's a humble response. Wouldn't expect much less. So here again, we said that the root of your chart is at the IC in Aquarius, but the 11th house up here, this part of the sky, is synonymous with the energy of Aquarius. It's our networks, it's our spheres of influence. It's where we connect online and in, the farmer's market or the library or whatever it is, yoga club. And so you have Virgo here, as all Scorpios do, because that's the archetype. But you also have this thing here, the horseshoe, which is K2, the South Node, which is the predominance of mass experiences, lifetimes of experiences. You know what it's like to network. You know how to connect with different people from different layers, different groups. But it's in Virgo, so it's like you're able to harvest great connections and even come into experiences where you're able to reframe and end things, karmic endings. You'll be like, I'm going to leave that group of people. They're just not for me anymore. But you're able to reframe your perspective on it, and it's a bit like tying your shoelaces so you don't trip over it and it doesn't snag you. You can always come back to it later. It's better than it was when you started out. So you leave things better than you started them out at.
Mm-hmm. Nice to know.
Opposite is where it's opposites where you get to explore more for your creativity when you bring your creativity to the field of these types of people.
Mm.
And so that's all of that. And so we see that Uranus, as I say, is at the 29 degrees. It's also the ruling planet of Aquarius in the modern day, and the 11th house, same energy. It's in your Sagittarius at 29 degrees, right next to Saturn. So you're able to go with the tradition and you're able to go with the rebels. You're valued by the rebellious path, but you also are able to frame things in a very respectable manner. And so that's really nice. In a sense, you could buy the most, for instance, if you was to come out of a product, it could be like the most out there product, but it will come in a very nice regal packaging and be presented very nicely. People they wouldn't be scared off by the obtuse triangle effect of Uranian kind of shocking. This is so radical. It's just beyond, it's ahead of its time. You can make things go nicely. A bit like how one, again, not being sexist, one would say ladies first, and a lady would, you put them in the door first. We could do it with anyone, really. It's called graciousness. But a woman would also smarten a man's tie or whatever like this, because you're able to give form and structure to something, like a lady gives form and structure to a disheveled man like myself sometimes. And so, again, the quality of femininity would be 0 and the masculinity would be 1. And 0 always comes before 1. Still a second joke from Russell Brand. That's why we're the second coming. By the way, I don't put him on a pedestal, but he's kind of funny. So that's pretty much that. And basically what I want to just close on before I ask you a question is that you can see where you are at. The eclipse happened 6 months ago on your Saturn. So you've been building a structured platform for your continued conscious creativity since the eclipse and the winter on Christmas Day, Boxing Day.
Wow.
And then we had the new moon on your Mars, which is that action man in your day-to-day business. Could have been really busy.
Yep.
And then the next one where we're at now is this is going to be like you've got an eclipse here in your ninth house of belief systems. And really, I've just opened up a bit of a clanger, and I imagine you're going to be probably researching spirituality and astrology and a little bit. But no predominance, no pressure. You do what's called on for you. Obviously, there's much bigger things for us to look at. World views. How do we nurture ourselves in this world which we're awakening to? And, not that the Midas touch that now you're probably going to be opening up astrology, but hopefully I've been able to give some congruence to it and the validity of it and see why that it's been a tradition that's lasted the test of time and keeps coming back.
Yeah, most definitely.
Shall I stop sharing the screen, or have you got any other questions about that?
No, not in particular. No, not from the screen itself. You can stop sharing.
Well, I will do one little smarty pants thing if you don't have 2 seconds, or unless you really want to finish up right now.
Let me see, what time is it? Oh, well, the only reason why I have to cut it short is because my audio editing program doesn't allow me to make files past a big number, so I just have to be careful of that. Usually it's around 3 hours I like to cut it, but I'm in no rush. I could spare a few more minutes for sure. Okay, well, this is my most favorite thing, which is I've done a video about it on other astrologers' channels, and it's called the Progress Chart. Because obviously this planet's kept moving, right? After we were born, it was just for a moment. We took that breath when we came out of our mothers. We were crowned out of our mothers, and that's when we are being born into this world. And so the planet's kept moving, and there's a way to do a progress chart, which is very much Fibonacci based time sequence, where the moon moves 1 degree every 3 weeks, and the sun moves 1 degree every year in the chart, and all the other ones move in correspondence to that same ratio. Okay, so for instance, like Pluto, as we have mentioned, it's far out. It hardly moves in the progress chart over the course of a 90-year life spectrum. Obviously, you're like 32, right? Something like this. Yeah, I'll be 32 in November.
Cool. And so what happens is that over the course of 27 years, the moon will return back to where it started out. And Saturn in the actual sky will go around the whole sky as well at that same time, as I said earlier about the moon being the closest, Saturn being the farthest. So it's perfect cogs in the timing clock here, what we could call the sky clock. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to progress the chart, and you're going to see that your sun is going to be at like 10 degrees of Capricorn next to your Neptune, and your Uranus is probably going to have moved into Capricorn. Your ascendant might even be Sagittarius, and your moon is likely to have gone all the way around and into Virgo by this point. And so the reason why this is important is actually at some point along the line, you would have had a new moon, and you would have been about 10 years old at that point.
Okay.
And so that would have been seed that planted for you in your life at 10 years old. And you're within that lunar cycle for 27 years until you're 37 or so, you know?
Okay.
So, for instance, for me, that happened when I was 7 years old. My parents got divorced. We moved house. And now I have that closing out of the cycle, and the next new moon takes place next year. And that's a new moon for me, which will last for the next 28 years. So it's quite deep, but it's very powerful, and it's all based on Fibonacci. And so I'll just show you what yours looks like. Ding, ding, ding. This is it. As I said, well, you've moved from a Scorpio ascendant all the way through Sagittarius, which you would have been for quite a lot of the life. And now you're a Capricorn ascendant. And as I said, your sun's at 10 degrees next to Neptune, which is like, oh my God, I am Mother Teresa over here. you're like so like spiritually like on fire. I'm born with that. but not as close as that. My one's I've got my sun at 3 degrees of Capricorn, and my Neptune is at 5 degrees. So there's about 1.5 degrees between my sun Neptune conjunction. However, you've got it in the chart here within 1 degree, and the sun will move on from that. But this is important for you, is in like you're structuring your boundaries. You might feel that a lot of people can easily project upon you as well, and yet they don't quite see you for the person that you are 100%. But because Neptune is ruler of Pisces in this chart, it's through your communication that you're able to structure oh so well. Similar kind of thing. It's just you're growing into yourself. The natal chart will always be the chart. It's just that you grow into self throughout the continued spirals of time. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that. But obviously the moon, I was a little bit wrong. It's gone further around than it was. It's in Libra. But if I just go back a couple of years just to show the example, then I'll stop sharing the screen. You can see that the moon in well, here we go. Go back here. I've gone a bit far. The moon in 2018 would have returned back to the same aspect in correspondence to when you were born.
Okay.
But it would have been that it returned to the same degree of when you were born in 2016. However, you would have had your full moon, first of which, in this progress chart, and you'll have another one. You had your full moon here in 2009. And that would have been in Gemini. So you maybe, in a sense, 2009, releasing some emotional information that you were using in your day-to-day life and had done up until that point. So, for instance, you could have left school or left college, or even changed a belief system or ideology at that point.
Yeah.
And so when I work with this with my clients, it can be quite therapeutic, and you get to go through every different thing that they've experienced. And it can take a couple of hours really to go through it. And I always do an angel chart reading like what I did with you first. And so some people will choose to come back. I try to empower people to the transit so that they're able to make the most of them going forward. But see that actually you had the new moon here in 1997. and that would have been in your first house of belief systems and exploration and all this kind of thing.
Okay.
And so the last bit will be obviously 28 years later. Obviously, that's quite a way off yet. But we'll see. The next new moon is going to be in Capricorn. It's going to be towards the end of Capricorn. This is an omen now. What isn't? Or as they say, it's a saga now. Oh gosh, I went past it. Went a bit. So that's 17 degrees of Capricorn. This is years into the. It's 7 years from now, and so all of that energy which I've been describing when I talked about the politics, that's going to be long gone from Capricorn by that point. Like Pluto's going to be halfway through Aquarius by the time that you get your new moon, and Saturn's going to be way up over here in Taurus or something. But anyway, this is your new moon in 7 years from now. And it's in Capricorn, conjuncture ascendant. It's a new structure on self-identity. I think that the world's going to be a completely different place. Even our conception of time, spirituality in the world, everything's going to be so different by this point. So it's no point trying to say what we'll be doing and just sharing this is kind of what's going on.
Right.
Anyway, I've bombarded you. I don't mean to frazzle your circuit. I kind of frazzled my own.
Man, there's been a lot of info. I feel like I got a lot to digest. I might have to watch this again and try to make some sense of the stuff that never made sense to me in the moment.
Sure, I'm going to be I'll premiere this video on my channel, and I'll be watching it back and commenting in the live chat with the people who watch it.
Oh, cool!
And I really want to maybe do an opportunity where I can listen to you a lot more and talk a lot less, and so I can kind of share what you're doing on your platform.
Sure.
But I will link your platform below, and I feel like this is a good opportunity for you to ferry people towards it, and I'll do the same, and so that we can have a nice close, I suppose.
That'd be great, man. I appreciate that.
So what have you got to say about your services or what you're doing on your platform, the different people that you interview, and to get people over to check you out?
Well, the Further Liberation podcast is just that my podcast is a lot about just exploring new ideas, trying to understand different perspectives of what the basis for it is just truth. But I think of truth as synonymous with love. So I often talk about how they're one and the same, and how in order to come to a state of love and well-being, we need to understand what's true about ourselves and the world around us. So I talk to a number of different people. It's not necessarily just about spirituality. I've spoken to people that are more into politics and societal change and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all about going deep into different ideas to try to find out what's true. And other than that, I have the Instagram, which is pretty much a reflection of that. I have a website that is in the works of being changed a little bit now because I'm starting up my own coaching program. I have been coaching people for several months. I've been doing it since last November, actually. But I'm actually going to try to make it more of a job, because what I want to basically, I feel as if in some way my purpose here, or the purpose I've chosen, is to help illuminate people on certain subjects and help empower people, help people wake up to what they truly are so they can become their best self. So I have done that in many ways in, like I said, coaching people over the last 6 months, but it was more of just of a conversation base for a long time. But as of recently, I've taken on people who I've actually played the role as coach or teacher, and they've played the role as students. So rather than just talking back and forth as friends, in a sense, I've kind of given them tips and tools and recommended certain practices that they should take on. And when they've done that and they've committed to me in some way, I see much bigger changes. So I'm leaning towards doing a lot more of that, because when people just chat to me as a friend, I still value that time, and I'm grateful that they value it as well. But if I really want to make change quickly, which I think is necessary at this point, because there's a lot of suffering going on in the world, I think it's necessary that people make a commitment to what I'm offering, so therefore they can actually make some true long-lasting change. So that's what I'm moving into now. That's been a lot of my focus lately, is really creating that coaching program so I can help people on a deeper level.
Great, that's great. And after having read your chart, that feels so much more meaningful now to hear this from you.
Mm.
Present with that.
Mhm.
Now, just looking back at your chart, like as we say with the Scorpio ascendant conjunct Venus, which rules the observation and the witness of self and others, you really do hold that space. You've
Yeah.
proven it for 2 hours or more, hold 2.5 hours of me. You held the space. You didn't interrupt me once. You listened to me, even if maybe you didn't have to agree with everything. You still held the space, and so you do this for yourself. You do this for your friends, and you're now providing a service. And I'll tell you how I started out my service in 2015. I didn't call myself an astrologer, even though I had lots of astrology knowledge. I was still studying, and I still am now. However, I was encouraged to start something. As I said, my mum's a psychotherapist, and so I just said, okay, well, I'm here. I've got no qualifications, and I was really concerned about people barking down me for not having any qualifications. I don't even have astrological qualifications now, but I'm still a very well infused astrologer, maybe more so than many people who would have qualifications.
Mm.
I've taken little bits from others. That's not to say that I look down on anybody who does have a qualification. I even might get one myself one day. They allow a fall in the class. And so, anyway, so I started out a page on Facebook, which I still use now. I called it first something listening. I can't remember what I called it, but now it's called astrological perspective shifting. But I wanted to call it about listening because I would just hold space for people, a safe space if people weren't feeling heard. And that was my selling pitch. And I first was doing it for free, just like yourself, like to learn through the experience. And then I learned to put a price on it. And I think I only had 2 or 3 clients over the course of those years. And I was still studying my astrology. And so basically, it is a very valuable service which you're providing, and you're naturally innately gifted to do. And so too right that you put a price on it, because that means that you're getting the value you deserve, and people will get the quality that they deserve when they invest in you, because you've proven it, and your chart speaks for itself.
Well, that's nice to hear, man. It's always good to have that confirmation because, as we spoke a little bit about, I had that battle with self-worth, and even though I've seen myself change and give benefit to the lives around me for ever since I was young, I still had that reluctance to actually put a price tag on it because, well, for one, I just wanted to give it away. I just wanted everyone to feel what I feel. But I do understand now on a deeper level that not only do I have to make a living from this so I can do it all the time, but people don't make the commitment to themselves if they're not sacrificing something of themselves.
That's a really, really important thing. I've not heard that perspective before, and I really the penny dropped when I heard you say that. We don't make a commitment on ourselves unless we sacrifice something for ourselves. A bit like going out on a limb. When you say that you're going to go to do something, for instance, if you have to travel to the big city for the day, and you don't know how it's going to pan out, you don't know if the person's going to meet you for lunch, you're not quite sure of what you're going to do. But once you go out to the big city, you might make a day of it. You pack your bag, you're going to go for a nice cafe, you're going to see the sights. Even if that person doesn't turn up, you make sure you have a good time. It's a bit like when we spend our money on a consultation, we're going in on it for good reason. I like your analogy there.
Yeah, I noticed that in myself because I never knew what to do with the business aspect of it. It's never been my forte. So I actually hired a coach, and I realize now that if I never hired him, if I never sacrificed an amount of money that I felt not totally comfortable with at first, if it was just so cheap that I didn't care and I just threw it away, then I wouldn't have committed. But after the couple weeks of working with him, I realized that I've made all this progression because he kept telling me, he was always there, like, we're doing this. And I just trusted it. And I just went all in on it. And as he has guided me, it's brought me to a whole other level because of that. So I realized that that's what I need to do with people as well. If people want to get to the level that I am at or whatever, then it takes a level of commitment, and whether it's money or it's got to be some sort of energy exchange. It has to be something that they are willing to take a leap of faith, in a sense.
Yeah, I love that. Like, so for instance, like getting up with a personal trainer, like if it's not part of your habit and routine, firstly getting up early, which often seems to be the thing of that, getting up out of bed, wearing the clothes you might feel uncomfortable, and like facing the music. You know, that's a commitment, and is the motive. You've got to put your faith into the other person.
Yes,
which is actually, we're really learning that we're putting our faith in ourselves, aren't we? And so, but we've got to have the faith that the other person, who's actually the proof in the pudding, that we're going to make ourselves that same archetype, that same self-proven example.
Exactly, man.
I think you're doing that, and you've inspired me to see how I can continue to do that in my experiences as well.
Thank you.
Well, I do recommend that people can reach out to you by following the links, which I'll put in below.
So what about yourself? Where can people find you? I know you already have I've seen your stuff, but just say it for them.
Well, like you say, you've got to reinvest. And for me, I've still got some things to reinvest with regards to structuring my platform. Like I had a website at the end of last year. Because I'm still learning to become self-sustainable, I didn't actually reinvest in that, not because of lack of wanting to, but because other things became a priority. You know, a pair of shoes, they're falling apart. Some things become more of a priority, you know.
Right.
But that's not to say that we're not abundant. I think sometimes you have to step into the unknown, or, you know, some slight scarcity, so you can just do what you can with what you've got, and you never go without, right? And I will be getting that website back up.
Excellent.
And I will be getting some new shoes.
I need new shoes too.
And so basically, to answer your question, if people are interested on either astrology mentorship, which I do offer, which just means I can empower you to your journey to learn more about astrology, or if you would like a personal natal chart reading, or even deeper consultations, then my price range is £80 for the first hour. And any additional £40, and so it's half price for any second hours. It's just the first hour is 80. And so you can reach me on my email address, which is unityaroundthecorner@hotmail.com. And I will get back to you, and we'll arrange a mutually beneficial time, and we actually record on Zoom, just like how you and I are. So when I share the screen, you don't have to worry about taking notes so much. You can be in the moment, current in the conversation with me, and you get to rewatch it and go through all of the dates and information that I apply to your chart at the end. So you can reach me via that email address. I also have a YouTube channel, which I started in 2011. Firstly, started out as like a video diary, where I challenge myself to face my fears, like with diet and like with finding the value and philosophy and all these types of things that challenge us. And so I've been making videos with that consistently since 2011, and specifically since 2015, getting a bit more kind of theatrical, doing a bit of philosophy, poetry, and adding in monthly full moon and new moon reports ever since then as well. And so I get very academic with the astrology, and I've got interviews with dozens of different astrologers and spiritual leaders like yourself, which you can check out on my YouTube channel, which is called Unifying Perspectives. And on my Instagram, it's Philip Daniel Miles, which is my name.
Cool, man. Yeah. All right. Well, just the mind goes to, is there anything else we need to say?
I like because I watched a great interview with somebody that inspired me. She was doing interviews, and she inspired me to start the YouTube channel. And she interviewed somebody who was the astrologer. Her name's Lulu Marseille, or Lulu Mace, and she interviewed Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton. This is before I decided I was going to be the astrologer. The one guy she interviewed was called Gay Hendricks, and his philosophy was when you go, then what it does is it brings you into present, so it opens up possibilities, and it rattles both hemispheres of the brain together into unity.
Wow, yeah, that's cool.
Mm.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I guess that's it. Because, yeah, I'm sure we
Well, I'm
could
so
talk for a lot
grateful.
longer if we wanted to. But
Well, I'm grateful. This is divine time, and I'm so grateful for you, Michael. Thank you for holding space for me today, and everybody else who's stuck with us throughout this conversation. You're free.
yeah, really though. Yeah, and thank you for sharing with all that information, man. It was very, very well. It was just many new things that I have not even considered before. Like I said, I had an interest in astrology, but I had no idea it went as deep as you were demonstrating it. And this whole idea of the Earth neither being flat nor round, but somewhere in between in a holographic sense is something that I would love to learn more about. So if you have any sources for that, I would really like to dive deep into that concept.
Yeah. But there's lots of different YouTube channels, and my interviews are really generally with the people who most inspired me along my journey, who are now my peers in a sense. And so, um, Santos Bonacci, who's a syncretist who I regularly collaborate with. He is a great source of information with regards to cosmology and theology and language. He uses astrology, which is the language of all shapes, signs, and sigils. Astrology is a language, and so when we learn to see this, everything in correspondence to one another, it's a greater depth. And so Santos Bonacci is a great teacher of that. Also, the Flat Earth Paradise channel, which is very good. It's got some out there concepts about the subconscious and integration of all these types of things, and even through much of our folklore, nursery rhymes, and mythology, which all relates to the sine wave and astrology very deeply. Other than that, just follow your heart, really, isn't it? You're the greatest source. We can go to this and that, but really, you are the source.
Yes, indeed. And with that, I think that's a wonderful way to end it. So thank you, Philip.
Thank you so much for being present. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well.